Okay, great. So with that, I'll call the regular meeting of Township Council for Monday, May 13th to order. Of course, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular, acknowledge our valued relationships with the Katzie, Kwantlen, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. With that, could I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Rint. Call the question on A1. That carries unanimously. Get a motion to adopt the regular council meeting minutes of April 29th, moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Rint. Call the question on B1. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Get a motion to adopt the public hearing meeting minutes of April 29th, moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Rint. Call the question on B2. And that carries with Councillor Richter opposed. First delegation is Mohammed Kamel. Please come forward. And if you could, you have about 5 minutes. If you could definitely try to keep it to 5 minutes, please.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes,
I think that's
go ahead.
Yeah, dear Mayor Woodward, dear councillors, my name is Mohammed Kamel, and I'm the owner of the property at 7402 202 Street in Langley. And this is my friend Paul, who helped me managing the property. We are here today to give you some background about cutting or removing 6 dead trees from the property line, and to give you and to ask for the waiver of the penalties, the permit fees, and the cash in lieu for this property. And I'll leave the mic to explain further to you.
Okay, you want to set the PowerPoint? So this is in regards to 7402 208 Street in
And
Langley.
could you just confirm your name and address for the record, please?
Paul,
Paul?
yeah.
Okay.
The address is Richmond, 11711
Okay.
Richmond Road.
Great, thanks.
So basically the background. We had a fire on the property back in May 2023. There were dead trees had to remove for safety considerations, risk of falling on power lines, people, or property. And also fire risk. Number 2. Now, quote from the risk assessor report. As a general understanding, trees that are dead or poor condition does provide a certain level of risk, and in order to mitigate against these factors, oftentimes removal would be required. As the client has stated, there were 6 trees that have been decided to remove from the site, taking into consideration of the overall risk presented at the time. Next slide. Now, tree assessment. Arborist report conclusion. The assessment confirms that 6 western red cedar, Tuya pellicata trees, I believe, were deceased due to extensive wisteria infestation when they were removed. Observation of attached dead fine twigs, tight bark, and a dead upper canopy suggests recent tree death. Exacerbated by unchecked wisteria growth and typical recurring summer and spring drought. These drought conditions further intensified the stress on the trees, particularly since they were already compromised by invasive species. Photographic evidence I just lost it out right there. Oh yeah. Photographic evidence shows the severity of the infestation and the lack of recovery potential in the trees. Now the trees in question are on the slides. If you look at the top, there's notable dead sections with dense wisteria. And even the second picture over, notable dead sections with a dense wisteria there, and notable red foliage in the lower section with dense wisteria. You could also see one of the trees already lean and probably uprooted. This is the pictures of the tree that were cut. And you could clearly see the trees, the one was totally uprooted, and the other that was leaned in between. And this is the picture of the bark. As you can see, decay with buttress, and tree 703, decay with buttress again. Now, community benefit is a reduced risk of falling branches or trees, elimination of fire hazard, since we had a fire on the property earlier in May 2023, and safer environment for the residents. We are requesting for penalties as city bylaw allow the removal of protected trees when they are dead. I kindly request that you consider my request and waive, one, the $15,000 permit fees and the $48,000 cash in lieu. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions from council. Councilor Van Popta?
Thank you for being here. So you noted that the fire was in May of 2023?
That's correct.
Okay, and based on this information, the fire was not the contributor to the death of the trees?
No.
Okay. So when you applied for a building permit on August 4th and you did your declaration for your building permit, there is a tree declaration form indicating how many trees would be removed, and the indication is 0 trees on this property would be removed. So unless the trees, you're saying that the trees didn't die as a result of the fire, which happened before the building permit anyways, why are you now seeking an arborist report?
Because trees were dead and they're an issue. They would have, if it caught fire, it would have cost a neighbor's property catch on fire, and they got a private pole right there next door.
But according to your permit, you weren't removing trees. So if you already knew that they were dead, you would be removing them.
Yeah, it was not known at that time that they were dead.
Yeah.
So we realized that at a later stage, when we realized that they are dead, so yeah, they were removed.
So on your application, it's a numbered property on the applicant. Are you a developer by trade?
Yeah.
So you've gone through this process before?
Not really. That's my first time.
Okay. Did you use a licensed arborist to remove these trees?
At the time, we thought we needed an arborist because it was dead and it was a safety and fire issue. It is a safety and fire issue if you could look at the trees itself.
Okay, so I'm looking at your report from Mike
Yes.
Faidem and Associates. I see
Yes.
an aerial photo with hydro lines going across the street where the trees were removed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this past week, my own neighbor removed 2 trees, did not use an arborist, fell across the hydro lines, and I had live active lines across my driveway and in my property. They were active and live down on the ground when my mom walked out onto the driveway, and it could have been a tragic incident.
Yes.
We have permits and processes in place to ensure the safety of residents, neighbors, and those walking by. If these trees were such a hazard, and this close in proximity to BC hydro lines, why would you not use a licensed arborist? Especially if you're citing as a safety as a reason for you to remove them.
Because the tree was uprooted after, and the neighbor came and addressed this issue that his pole, private pole, especially electric, is right next to those trees.
So did you not see a safety concern with removing the trees?
With all the stress with the fire and the other stuff, I guess we were.
I
Let me do
noticed,
that thing,
I
so.
noticed in your own report or in your own presentation here, figure
Yes.
6, the tree
Figure
stump
6.
actually shows a tree tag on it. So that to me indicates that a previous report had been done on these trees. Do you have a copy of that report?
No, actually, we are not aware of that report.
No,
So why would there be a tree tag on your stump?
I'm not sure why
We're
there
not-
should be like a tree tag on the side.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Richter?
Yeah, I had basically the same questions. So the trees were not affected by the fire at all?
No, the trees were not affected by the fire, no.
Okay, so why would you put the fire on the property in the report to us?
Well,
Yeah.
I don't get that.
right. It's a concern because if somebody driving by through a cigarette butt, it would just light up. Or a lightning strike could have done it.
Okay. Now, you say here dead trees had to be removed for safety considerations, including risk of falling on power poles, people and property, and fire risk. Who advised you to do that?
Actually, there is a report by a risk assessor that was attached as well to the arborist report. And he confirmed that piece, that usually when trees are at this stage of life, like when they are dead, they pose a risk to people, to property, and they cause a fire risk because of of the infection that they had, and they are a lot of insects and stuff like that. So that suggests when the trees are at this condition, usually they must be removed for the safety of everyone. For the
Okay,
community
so
safety.
your risk assessor was associated with your insurance company then?
No, actually, he was. He confirmed that, and his report on memo has been already submitted to council members and to the mayor.
Okay, so when did the risk assessor do their report?
He did the report after cutting actually. That was the thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
So the risk assessor was the arborist?
No, actually, there are there is a separate risk assessor report,
Yeah,
and there is an arborist report. There are two separate reports.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Bailey?
So your application went in August, correct? Where you said you're not going to take any trees down?
Yeah, that was August of last year there.
Yeah, and you didn't think at that time that there was any danger to the trees? And I'm looking at these two pictures, and I can tell you right now, that didn't happen in a couple of months. Okay,
Yeah, actually, we did not check that at the time, when we were applying for demolition, and that was not checked. And then that was brought to our attention after the application and after demolition was already completed.
Yeah, because that is a long time delay.
And also, there was a tree that was uprooted after.
Those aren't the
After
uprooted
one.
trees, okay?
So,
And
no, I'm not saying those were, but
I'm just saying that decay took a lot longer than a couple of months to
Yeah, for sure.
to occur.
That-
So you should have put that in your application. Thank you.
Right, yeah.
Councillor Ferguson?
We'll look at that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming. I did want to say I appreciate the fact that you as business people understand you want to address safety.
yes.
And I manage a property for my family. My mom is 94, my dad's 95, so I have to make sure they have safety of the property. And another one we manage again through the property, through the family. And I had to apply through another community because I had dangerous trees and dying trees in a very close proximity to neighbors, hydroland. I contracted a arborist, and the very, very first thing he told me, don't cut the trees down. And I said, well, they're dangerous, they're dead. I will go through a permit process with the municipality, not ours, it was Vancouver, and we will have that assessed. Then the people from the staff from Vancouver came out, looked, and we had a negotiation, and the trees are down finally. But that was the very first thing he told me, is do not cut those trees down. So they're down now, but it takes a process you have to go through. And as your businessman, I think you're aware of that. Anyway, thank you for coming.
But,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing this to our attention. So yeah, that will be definitely taken into consideration for for if similar incidents happen for sure.
It's due to the stress of the fire and
that's the
everything
thing.
else compounded, it got overlooked.
That's
And
a
we
kind of a panic
apologize to the
thing,
council
more
for
or less,
that.
let us say. Yeah, so the panic of the fire created that kind of situation that things need to be made.
But the
rush.
neighbors and everything else compounded it, and it just overslept my mind, I guess his too. So, and especially with uprooted trees, panic even more, so.
All right, thank you very much for your delegation. There's no other questions from council.
Everything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next delegation, C2 from Amandeep and Rajveer Takar. Please come forward.
Your Worship, and councilors. My name is Rajveer Singh Thakkar, residence of Surrey, 1756671.
Hi, my name is Amandeep Thakkar. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my presentation here.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. Respected members of council and your worship, my sincere apologies for tree cutting without permit. After reading bylaw update, I fully understand I should have applied for the permit before I cut the trees. Bylaw for tree cutting was amended in 2019. I'm so sorry, I was not aware of that. And I also read somewhere in my law provisions that I can cut tree without the permission and then can submit for the permits afterwards. I will take full responsibility and will take actions to rectify the situation. My plan is to plant the trees again by the fence line. Once again, my sincere apologies to bylaw, and I just only request to reduce the fine for reasonable amount. I'm submitting some pictures to show the front of house was only the hedges and the back of house was some trees. I sent some pictures. I only request, please find one ticket and rest like for the fine for 4 trees for for back of the house. I already have like a big project on my way with a high bank interest rate. I am barely qualifying for the project. I once again request to reduce the fine to affordable amount. Thank you so much for your consideration. Amandeep and Rajveer Thakkar.
Great. I have a question from council. Councillor Van Popta.
Hi. I see your tree cutting declaration form here stamped March 18th, 2024. Is that your signature on it?
We submitted afterwards, right?
When were the trees removed?
In February.
In February.
Okay, so why would you enter a 0 quantity of trees removed?
Did we enter 0?
Yes.
In the one I sent to Diane Brown, we sent her the permit. We did draw
Yeah,
it.
I see the permit application, but there's another form that you filled out declaring how many trees you would be removing, and you entered 0.
Oh, we have
And then
cut
the
it
form-
already before that.
Oh, okay. So it might be a mistake there because there were 4 as the pictures. Can you show the pictures of the? Can we go back?
They have it there.
As you
That's the hedges, yeah. Those were the, yeah.
As you can see at the back, that's the fence line. There are 4 like trees. They're just like fruit trees or some sort of a trees. Like none of the trees which are like the species which we kind of saving species. Like they're like just fruit trees or something at the back.
Yeah, I'm not so concerned with the hedges, but can I ask who removed the trees? Who you had removed the trees?
It was me.
I think they're looking for the name.
So on the photo that I've got from staff here, I've got again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hydro and telecommunications wires.
Up on the side,
Yeah.
front of the house,
Yeah.
yes.
So can I ask why you thought it would be a good idea for yourself to be removing those trees?
Some are coming in the building envelope, and some were maybe dying trees.
No, I understand that, but
Yeah.
the safety aspect of it, you've got neighbors on all sides and
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah, there were.
yeah, that could have been very dangerous as somebody who just went through that.
But we took the full precautions, yeah.
And what precautions were those?
Those were like, we were there, like the person who helped me, he was there, and we removed it really, really carefully.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. Why did you need to remove the trees? Were you building something there?
That's correct. We are building a new house. We just bought this old house, and we found asbestos in it, so we tear it down now, and there will be a new house. We are applying for a permit.
Okay, so we've got some pictures in our package here of the house, and that would be the old house?
That was the
new
old
home?
house.
That was the old house, so you took everything off the property?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your delegation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next delegation is Barbara Sharp. Great. Thanks for coming here today, and just a reminder that it is for 5 minutes. Go ahead.
I better put this up here. Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. I'm here to make a presentation on behalf of Christmas in Williams Park. And this is going to be interesting. We've been doing this for 33 years, and in fall of 2023 was the first time the event wasn't supported by Township in those 33 years. We've had various styles of operation and presentation. It's been run by volunteers with staff support and run by Township staff with volunteer support. And then Township requested the event become a society so the event could have nonprofit status to collect donations. So the Township wasn't collecting donations any longer. Since COVID, the event's been drive-through only. First year the ticketing was used. Transition from walk-through to drive-through has been a huge success, as you know. And it provides an option for many residents who are not able to walk or navigate uneven surfaces. The park comes to life once the decorations are set up and the timer testing and electrical work have been done. These are some examples of how much you have to unpack and do and coordinate. And these are electrical components that need to be set up. And we've recently even taken a workshop, a couple of the board members, on how to put this together. And we have volunteers, many volunteers this past year in particular, putting things together, getting wood, restringing items. We've had local support from the newspaper to get those volunteers. It was very successful this past year. And there were minimal issues that were relating to pretty much the traffic being really busy. And one of those nights had a traffic accident. Tesla drove right into the traffic control vehicle because they didn't bother to look. $13,000 to the vehicle and a huge, totally uncontrollable, unpredictable accident that could happen to anybody. We spend the year, the volunteer board and I, going out, getting decorations, saving lots of money for all those decorations, and picking up all the different things that we do at the event, like the candy canes, the buttons. We supply all the goods to the park, all the decorations, all the lights, all the cords, everything like that, all the stuff for the volunteers. We buy our lights through DECRA, which was brought to us by our attention by Township initially. We've added lots of new features every year. We've had lots of volunteers again. Key Largo, the group with the security camera was really welcome this year. And again, volunteers doing stringing, doing the tent, doing the donations, doing, greeting and helping. And staff was a really big help in the setup and the takedown. We've had dinosaurs. We get minibuses through with seniors. Again, volunteers, like even 3 members of this council were there this past year. And again, horses. We get lit up cars. We have all kinds of people coming through. You have 3 options in your staff report today. You know what they are. You will have read your report. But there's some mistakes in that report. So Township takes over all organizing is one, providing all staff time for everything, including setup and takedown, greeting during the event, etc. Right now, society funds all the decorations, the lights, the volunteer gear, safety vests, candy canes, tent, heat, etc. We provide all the goods and provide all the hours for greeting. The cost to TOL is just the staff time of setup and takedown, which has been approximately $50,000. This first option is now suggesting they do everything, and in the first year alone here will cost you $250,000, and make no mistake, having been involved for 13 years, I know that's a light number. The society provides 70% support from the survey that was done, that people love this event, and indicated a better need for traffic control, which we also provide, not the Township. And we have agreed to that. We agreed to provide attendance management, go back to maybe trying the ticketing we did during COVID, especially on the weekends. And so that's not been a problem. We met with staff about that. Then there's other things in the report that are also not quite correct, like even mentioning the thing about brown pit for parking. It was me personally who looked after that. I managed it with the Ministry of Transport. I also talked to the bus companies and ordered the buses and everything. It was not the township. There's just some misleading information in that report. We do everything but the setup and takedown. So you need to understand that there's going to be a large cost to the township of staffing just to take over all the hours and hours throughout the year that the society members put in on their own time. So there were never enough volunteers to set up and take down, but that's because it's really hard to get people to set up and take down, as you know. If you've been to the event, you can see the work that's involved, the weeks and time of getting that stuff out there and getting it set up properly with all the electrical work and everything. So for 2023, we managed the event, not the township, and the staff did the setup and take down in consultation with us, and they do a fantastic job. Township did not support the traffic control. That was all done by the society. We paid for all of that and looked after that. So we had discussions. We want to make sure that those discussions continue. We think that, option one, we need to make sure you understand, will kill the event, because there's no way that we can set up and take down, and we can't even get volunteers to do that. Option two is the status quo, most cost-effective method for this township. And option three is an inefficient use of taxpayer dollars. I would not recommend that township supports spending $250,000 this year, and who knows how much in every other year, to run an event that's successful in its 34th year this year by volunteers with the support from the township. So, in conclusion, I would suggest that you choose option two for many reasons as stated. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing any questions from council. Here we go. Well, it's fine. I understand. Councilor Richter, go ahead.
Thank you. So I have 3 questions.
Okay.
Just of clarification. The first one is, you had mentioned in one of your earlier slides that the event was originally township run with volunteer support, and then it became volunteer run with township support.
Correct.
What was the logic for the transition in the first place?
Well, part of the transition, at least what I was told at the time, and it's happened in the last 13 years when I've been involved, was because there was the weekend event that took on a lot of taxing from the neighbors, because we had so many issues with parking, because people were walking through the park. It was a nightmare. We had the brown pit area, and we didn't know how long we might even have that for. So township staff wanted us to try to change the style of the event and to become a society in order that we could collect donations. Because at that time, initially when I was involved, staff was collecting the donations, which is not really appropriate. And so the society said that they would do that, and they would manage and kind of take as much control as they could of the event. What we found, of course, with the setup and takedown, which was always largely supported by staff, is that there was no way a group of volunteers could do that on any kind of ongoing basis. You have a 3-week event, and you have all kinds of structures and process put into place to manage that event with electrical cords. You just got to go out and look at the place when it's all lit up, and you can see how much work there is there. And there's no way you're going to get a trained set of volunteers to come out and do that, because they just can't commit that kind of time, for one thing. And you might get one year and then have to retrain the next year, and it just becomes this cycle of inefficiency. So the best, most efficient method has been the staff setting up and taking down, and we manage the rest of the event.
Okay. So approximately how many hours of work do society volunteers put in each year?
Oh boy, I haven't even got that number, but I mean, if I look at myself, for example, like you figure there's, it's open every night from 5 to 9. You're usually there 4:30 till 9:30. So you look at that times, 21 for one person. right? And that doesn't take into consideration all the other things that we do in picking up the goods and in ordering and dropping things off. Like those trees I had the picture of there, I literally went over to Mission to pick those up, and I picked them up and drove them to the park. Like, it isn't the staff doing all that, it's us. The staff sets up and takes down. Now, if we have a need of a really large vehicle, for example, at one time, we can't get one, then we ask if it's possible that they can go to Costco and pick up a great big huge load or flat of something. But we actually do have access to big vehicles now with some of the board members because they have a business with an electrical company. We were able to utilize that this year to great success to help even with some of the setup with the electrical stuff. So it's been very, very useful, right?
Okay, so if, I guess maybe this is a two-part question. Who owns the lights, the cords, et cetera?
We own it all.
You own it all.
Society owns it all.
So if council went with the option 3 to
Yeah.
take it back to staff running it,
Yeah.
would those things go back to, would it go to township or not?
Why would it?
Okay,
If you've ever closed down a society, which we would be having to do, you would sell off all your assets, take all your money, and then you would donate it to another nonprofit. I've been through that process in North Van before, so I know how that works. So we own all those things. They're our assets, not the township assets.
and about how much money have you got invested in
Oh,
those
my goodness.
assets?
Any idea? It's, I mean, you're talking at 250,000 this year. That's why I say that's a minimal number at best. I mean, we spend 20,000 just on lights a year. I mean, it's phenomenal the amount of cost that there is involved in all the, and don't forget, if township takes it over, you're not going to have staff monitoring marketplace throughout the year and things like that. I mean, we do that so that it saves a lot of money on decorations and things. We buy lots of those things on a secondhand basis from people that are selling blow-ups and things like that. We change out the event every year, so that costs more money. So we add features every year. Like this year, I would get the fan up and running because we've actually done the course on how to set up the controller, right? So that's all donated time and cost that are free for the township right now. And it's part of community involvement too. Let's not forget about that. We must have had, what, Kathy, 40 volunteers?
43.
43 volunteers this year, as an example. So that's nothing to sneeze at. That's coming out and helping do restringing, helping do the greeting at night at the tent and stuff like that. Like, we provide all that tent and heating and everything too, right? Safety vests, you name it, we buy it all.
So when the transition was made
Yeah.
from township with volunteer to volunteer with township,
Right.
it was over collecting donations. So if council went with option 3 in this report, would township staff collect the donations?
Well, they would have to.
And how much donations come in a year?
Well, there's a substantial amount. You'd be surprised, even though clearly not everybody that comes through donates, but there's a lot of people that come through and donate. If you're comparing our event to the more expensive Christmas events out there, people are happy to drop in, you know, a $5 or a $10 bill or whatever, and it all adds up, right? You know, over the period of time that we're there collecting. And let's also keep in mind that last year, not 2023, but 2022, when we were out there, it was like, what, Cindy, was it minus 41 or something? Minus 14 degrees. Yeah, well, it was like freezing. We couldn't even get warm out there that night. So people would have to contend with that. So the board members are the ones that really keep it moving as well, because, you know, we have all the people working with the volunteers and showing them how to do things. Like, we go out in the field at night. If there's lights out, we do the fixing. We don't call staff in every single time there's a little problem out there. We do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just remind me again, how many people come through this event
Oh,
in
it was between 30 to 40,000 people.
30 to 40,000 people, wow. Well, thank you for...
They love the drive-through. Yeah. Thanks.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, thanks for coming, Ms. Sharp. I'm not quite sure if you know that I was on the Burn Fund board for 8 years, and as that at least 4 times a month for bright nights, I was a supervisor for 8 years times 4. So I'm quite familiar with large light lit events. So I have to ask you, you had 30 to 40,000 people come through. In the meantime, have you mined any of those people to see if you can get volunteers? Because
All the time.
Because Bright Nights is run entirely volunteer.
We do it all the time, Councillor Bailey.
The lights are put up for a month by volunteers. They're taken down for a month for volunteers, and they are staffed by volunteers for that month. So I kind of disagree with the fact that volunteers cannot run something, because Bright Nights is very significantly larger than this is. There's about 2 million lights at Bright Nights. So another thing is what procedures do you have for collecting the money? I was there, and after you close, how do you handle the money, the donations?
Our treasurer picks it up.
Okay, I'll tell you the process that I'm used to. 2 board members take the money and count it.
Yeah, that's done.
Then it goes into a safe. Then when it gets moved the next time, 2 different board members count it again, and there is always a witness. Is anything close like that in place for the donations at Christmas?
Yes, it is. And the person here could tell you exactly that process and who is with him and stuff isn't here right now because he's not available. Because this was very short notice, as you know.
Okay.
This report came out to you like Friday, I think it was. So we haven't even had time to have much discussion on this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, he's a retired RCMP officer.
Thank you.
Councillor Kunst?
Thanks very much for coming. You know, I've always supported the Christmas in Williams Park, and when I saw the 3 options, I was kind of curious as to, is there anyone on the society that wants the township to take over this Christmas in Williams Park?
Well, the short, quick answer, because we haven't been able to have a board meeting to have a good discussion about it, is no. Because it doesn't make any sense financially whatsoever, or even optically or community support-wise. It's actually not treating volunteers with very much respect.
Yeah, no, the reason I asked is because I don't know that, you know, Township has actually ever done that, maybe taken over another society and then do the work of the society when the society's willing to do the work. So I just wanted to get that clarification. And again, thanks for coming. I've always loved coming to the, taking my grandkids, taking my elderly parents that can't walk the park. And again, I hope that we would maybe opt for option 2 and just keep it status quo. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Martins?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Ms. Sharp, for being here today on short notice, as you mentioned. I had no idea this report was going to be here either until I got my agenda package on Thursday. Yeah, so I am a little perplexed by the recommendations, to be honest. Why we would take over from a nonprofit society who's been doing an event for years, diligently and working hard. It doesn't feel right. I don't think that's... it isn't respectful to the volunteers. And I apologize for the messaging coming that way. I find it actually quite offensive. And I am waiting for this agenda item to be discussed because I'm not seeing why spending $250,000 to do this ourselves is fiscally responsible. So I look forward to that debate. But while you're here, a couple of questions for you. How many members are on your board, out of curiosity?
Oh, just a minute here. 6.
6, okay. And you mentioned the amount of time it takes, you know, generally around throughout the year, keeping this alive. I was trying to do some quick math. You're open for 21 nights. And
Correct.
You mentioned basically a 5-hour shift. How many people will you have on site working each night approximately?
Usually I seem to average around 4 or 5 because, you know, we would have to include the dinosaur and the zebra, maybe even 6 with that involved. And that also doesn't include the 2 weekends of the volunteers that came out and did an enormous amount of restringing of decorations, which saved oodles of money as well, right?
Yeah. Okay, because I'm just, trying to do mental math, which is what they teach in school.
I know.
School nowadays.
I didn't have time to do it all, sorry.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm trying to see this. So just even if we look at, say, the 4 to 5 per night,
Right.
and we're looking at 105 hours. So the 4:30 to 9:30 times 21 comes up to 105 hours times 4. And then that's staff time now, because we would have to, if we're contemplating option 3, we'd have to look at paying staff for those nights additionally to the setup, the takedown, and then all the work done throughout the year. So the price tag adds up pretty quickly, and I'm not even sure the township has the bandwidth and staff resources to take that on. But I mean, I just want to, again, thank you. I was one of those counselors that came and volunteered. I always believe it's important to be there firsthand and see things from that perspective, and recognizing the work that goes into your event, your society's event. And it is a gem. It's been around for years in the township, and it's done very well. And I don't want to criticize how you're doing your event versus another organization. We're all unique, we're different, we're in Langley. And, you know, perhaps there's a middle ground where there's more financial resources provided. Anyways, I look forward to the debate further on in our meeting, but thanks again to you and your society for all of your hard work and commitment, and it certainly enhanced Christmas for many people in the township of Langley over the years.
Why we do it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for coming, Mrs. Chair. I just want to clarify with my colleagues that all the years I've been involved in council, we always get the agenda on the Thursday, and it comes back from Monday. That's consistent of all councillors. Should be aware of that.
Also, Councillor Ferguson, I understand this delegation was filed 2 weeks ago.
Okay, well, I just wanted my colleagues at council saying that they'd never heard of the agenda coming at a different time. Okay, so my favorite person, Mrs. Sharp, last year, help me out. You came to this council meeting and you were concerned about Christmas and Williams Park going down. Is that not correct?
Because of lack of staff support.
Lack of staff, but there was wherever the
Oh, no, it's really important, the reason,
was.
Councillor Ferguson. It's very important what the reason is.
Okay, well, you're here today. Thank you for coming. I was at this council seat. I remember you saying we need a big slogan, save Williams Park. So you're here tonight. We're save Williams. Here we are. You've had a year. We actually had discussions last time where we had a motion of council that would go back to staff. And staff would review it and meet with all the people that are involved, meet with our staff, and then put together some. And we actually found some money for you, moved forward. Now, what are we going to do next year? So I remember, if I may, did you not say last year that you were concerned about the lack of volunteers and lack of energy because people can't do these kind of events forever? So you're looking for a little bit of help.
Those are not my words, Councillor Ferguson. I said that I was concerned about the setup and takedown because of the amount of education that's required, even on the electrical components of that, for volunteers to undertake.
Okay, now I understand, but as you had said also, I mean, we're not having a debate here. We're just talking. We were trying to save Williams Park. So what you had also said, your people, they move on. They do other things. They like some of us, they get a little bit older, and it's difficult to many of us in volunteer. But I'm a Rotarian to find more and more volunteers because people move on. So it was put in our hands to try to save Williams Park, which we did. Now an opportunity's come forward. I understand. Have you not met with staff and talked to them about what the option would be?
No. We talked to staff about how to make sure that we didn't have any issues next season. When we left the last meeting, it was very clear to me, because we suggested we would do ticketing again, we would do absolute traffic control on the weekends and monitor the weeknights, which have not been a problem, and see how that goes. And that was the way we left it. There was no indication whatsoever of option 3 or option 1.
So anyway, a report is put in front of us today.
Yeah.
I understand you and I understand how important. I wasn't able to go last year for personal reasons. And I remember the old days, and thank you very much. We used to decorate our cars, and we used to drive through. Sometimes we walk through. We've had our church group through. We've had our Rotary groups through. We've had other people through. We appreciate what you've done as a former chair of the Langley Senior Center. We bring people through as well. So we appreciate what you and your group have done. Now we're looking at new challenges, new changes, the rules of I guess safety, the rules of other things to change. If you have to have a parade in the city now or township now, you have to have more and more regulations met. WCB and everything else. There's so many different things. The city of Langley doesn't even have a parade anymore. I used to love their parade. It's because of the rules and regulations now of shutting down roads. Anyway, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Sharp, for coming.
Thank you. Councillor Van Popta.
Thank you for being here. I just have 4 quick questions. Bullet 2 of your presentation, it says fall of 2023 was the first time the event was not supported by the Township of Langley in 33 years.
That's correct.
Did we not provide you with $50,000 worth of staff time to set up and take down?
After we came and made a presentation and asked, but that was the first time that this event had ever had an issue of council not supporting the event. If that's not clear, I'll just make it clear now. That's the very first time any mayor and council have not supported Christmas in Williams Park in 33 years.
Yeah, I'm confused as well, but we'll just leave it there.
Okay, yeah, because before it came to council, I was never aware of it.
It's
so
clear that Township
it wasn't
Council,
staff, it wasn't council that.
It received this most significant contribution to anything in the township for 2023 by far. Just leave it there.
Okay. Next question. You have said that it would be a $250,000 investment. Can you provide backup for that number? Do you have financial reporting to confirm that dollar value?
Your report identifies $140,000 and $110,000, and last time I did math, it comes out to $250,000.
Okay, but can your reporting verify that that's
It's not my reporting, it's your staff reporting.
Yeah, so there's a separation between capital and operating, which we can get to.
Still $250,000.
I would just
Okay.
This is not going anywhere constructive.
All right, so Township runs lots of events and we require volunteers quite often. If Township did take this over, would yourself or any of the 30 to 40 volunteers that work on the event be willing to still support the event?
I guess I'd have to ask you, Councillor Van Popta, why would you do that when it's already run with those volunteers? Why would you take it over, spend $250,000 and run it with volunteers just like we're doing?
From I
think that's a council question.
Okay, I'll address that. I'll address that question.
The delegation, they're not here to ask us questions.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yep. So you're not willing to?
It's not my report. I can't identify where they got the numbers.
No. I'm asking you if you'd be willing to volunteer.
Oh, I'd have to talk to all the volunteers. There's a whole slew of them.
Would you be willing to volunteer?
Me personally, I'd
Yes.
have to take into consideration what it is you were doing with the event.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we did take this over, and you indicated that you would be selling the decorations and folding the society, what worthy charity would you be donating those funds to?
Oh, I'd have to talk to the board. That's a board decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up question, and it may put you on the spot, so if you can't answer it, don't worry. Roughly, do you have any idea how many staff people Township would need to put on this event or hire in order to cover the volunteer component?
My volunteer coordinator is saying 70.
70 staff, 70 new staff.
I don't know what the hours would be, but
Okay.
And they have to be willing to work in snow, sleet, hail,
yeah,
rain, and minus
pretty crappy weather.
degree weather at night, and pay $500 for boots that keep their feet warm.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you very much. And
I hope that
thank
helps.
you for all you've done for Christmas in Williams Park over the years.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo that, and I'd like to thank you as well. I had a question, again, for everything that's all of the volunteers, not just yourself, have done for the event over the years. The question, I think came up last year. I just wanted to confirm that it's still the case, that the event cannot proceed without significant township support. Is that correct?
without staff setting up and taking down. I want to be very clear, we're not asking for other support. We're not asking for money.
Again, I didn't ask about that. I just said
Okay.
without significant staff support from the Township of Langley, the event cannot proceed.
Well, I don't call it significant, Your Worship, because it's only staff, so it's full-on staff set up and take down.
It's only staff. Okay, I appreciate your question. I
Yeah.
appreciate your delegation. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Next delegation from Ron and Sandra Jaworski. Please come forward. Thank you for your patience as we got to your delegation as well.
That's fine, thank
So
you.
please proceed. Go ahead.
Okay, I am Sandra Jaworski, my husband Ron Jaworski. Sorry, you want that real close. Yeah. We must start by congratulating Mayor Woodward and the whole council for all the positive changes we've seen in Langley since you've come on board a couple of years ago. The infrastructure, our roads, what's going, it used to be a gong show, and we can finally see light at the end of the tunnel.
And only in 18 months, not quite 2
I
years
know,
yet. Give us 6 more months
yes.
to get even more done.
I
But
know,
thank you.
and
Yeah.
so we appreciate that from the bottom of our hearts. We understand they're also putting in a crosswalk at 207 and 80th Avenue.
That's correct. That's been funded by council to provide you
That
with
can't come soon
a
enough.
safe signalized pedestrian
I'll
crossing.
tell you,
Yeah, long
the
overdue.
people with the strollers and the seniors with their scooters and stuff trying to cross there, it's a dangerous spot.
We agree, and
So we're
council
glad.
has funded that to proceed.
Now,
Yeah.
the recreational facilities that you guys have fast-tracked in keeping up with the seniors, the super seniors now, and the youth in our, I love that part, and the growing community is the talk of the town. It truly is. So we brag about you guys every chance we get, and the special treatment of our township people, like the population, to be able to get discounts and better prices and first dibs at all of the facilities. That's amazing. So I know that we love all of that. Now, I got to go on to the truly pressing matter that we came to discuss. Placing a dog park in the midst of a densely populated residential area disrupts the peace and tranquility that residents expect in their outdoor spaces. The constant loud barking from the dogs at all hours is disruptive and unbearable, especially how it echoes through the streets with the condos that have all built up around the park. It's like a wind tunnel with the dogs barking. It makes it impossible for residents to enjoy their balconies for relaxation and socializing. Imagine trying to read a book on your balcony. It's essential to balance the needs of dog owners with the rights of residents to have a comfortable outdoor environment. This has not been done. We have rights as citizens to be comfortable in our outdoor space on our balconies, to enjoy fresh air and socialize with neighbors, family, and friends, and dinners on our decks if we want. But no, we got to take our family and friends inside, close the doors, close the windows. It's so embarrassing to say this is what we must put up with day in and day out. Our company remarked in a joking way, "Whose smart idea was that?" Then started laughing. This is not a laughing matter. If the dog park cannot be moved to an appropriate location, and we don't understand why it can't. I mean, 72nd Avenue and 208th Street was only put in a couple of years ago. It was a screw up, and now it's being ripped out because the township, smart minds are getting together and saying, it was a mistake, let's fix it. Well, you know, smart minds prevailed there, and I think smart minds need to prevail again. So please, the dog park is literally on top of thousands of residents. There are no noise bylaws in place. Unfortunately, they've never been enforced in the dog park. Short of having a bylaw officer there every day from 4 till 9 p.m., this problem won't be solved, and the citizens of our community are at the mercy of the dogs. As adults and children walk along the side of the fence, there's a group of dogs that charge that fence every time when they're there, and people are scared. The seniors we've run into on the street won't even walk on that side of the road anymore along 207 because of them. And so they just avoid doing that. So please find a solution for this. The dogs should be in an area like Derby Reach Park. They can go there, it's off leash, they can run and bark to their heart's content and not bother a soul. Like, maybe use this area for picnic tables or extra parking space for all the up and coming recreation. Better yet, why don't we put in another daycare there? And I'm okay with that. I think everybody's okay with that. That wouldn't bother anybody to hear children laughing. But to hear the barking is insane. So if you can't, like I said, if you can't fix the mistake of it being there, then not sporadic, but daily enforcement by bylaw officers from 4 till 9. Like, they gotta be there. No one in this room would put up with this constant barking in their backyard, would they? Like, I don't know anybody that would enjoy their yard if it was just a constant out there. So we do recognize that you are not the council that approved this deal to begin with. However, we feel council is super progressive and can put your minds together and come up with some sort of a great solution. That's all I got to say about that. Now, if you want,
Yeah, no, play your
we
video.
have a little bit
No,
of a
I think
video
it's
here.
important that you play the video. I've seen it, so I appreciate you bringing it
Okay.
today.
How do I get sound on it?
Oh, no.
Need it louder.
Put it on your phone.
We can hear it.
No,
We
no.
can hear it here.
Well, that's not, the loudness is just not accurate.
That's just off in the background. That,
This is coming from our 6th floor.
you have on your
balcony,
phone.
No, when you played it, I played it on my laptop, it was noticeably louder. So what I will do is I'll get that file and I
Okay.
will distribute it to all of council.
And there's a second video that's taken at nighttime when they're out there with their
Okay.
flashlights.
All right. Why don't you resend that to me and I'll forward it to all of council.
Okay.
Okay.
I can do it.
Thank you.
Because what you hear, it's so loud. So if anybody can find a resolution to this.
We'll get that to council. Yeah. If you
Thank you
just
very much.
email those to me again. I have a question from council.
Yes.
Councillor Kunst, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So how long has the dog park been a problem? And when was it opened and how long have you heard
It's-
these barking dogs?
We moved there when Yorkson was first built, so 7 years. Now, as the community's grown, there's been more dogs, but they're coming in cars and getting them out of the cars and walking over with their dogs. I don't know where they're coming from, but it's an open area, so they bring their dogs.
Right.
But it's just gotten busier and busier and louder because there's more people and it's more built up and it's just like a wind tunnel blowing through there. So it's progressively gotten worse, so.
And do you ever find that it's always the same dogs?
Yeah, there are a couple of 4 real problem dogs out of
Right.
out of the 20 or so that are there all the time. There are a few that are problem dogs, but
Even the little ones yap.
So you would
Yeah.
prefer to get rid of the dog park?
100%. I can't see it being resolved unless there's somebody there saying, "Oh, you're."
Dog is not bark. How do you control a dog
Yeah.
from barking? There are ways to control a dog from barking, but these people just won't adhere to that.
And do you know if there's dogs in these condos and apartments too that are barking as well? Or is that
No.
happening as well? No.
No.
So it's definitely the dog park.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, no. If you get the proper video, you'll see it. My picture shows clearly. Here's a picture right now. They're out there with flashlights at nighttime.
Yeah. No, I can imagine it would just drive you nuts.
We can't have any company outside. We can't talk. We can't sit out there and enjoy the fresh air at all. We just have to close the doors and go in. And the more building, the more echoey it's gotten in there. So.
Thank
okay.
you.
Like calm summer evenings, it just goes
It's
through all the
ruined.
buildings. It's so
And it's ruined. Yeah. Okay.
horrible.
All right. I
Thank you.
appreciate your delegation. That's all the questions I have from
Thank
council.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
All right, we have a presentation from Metro Vancouver by Mr. Henderson. Please come forward. And again, you've been very patient, and I appreciate that.
Great, thanks a lot. The right presentation. Perfect, thanks. So I'm here this afternoon to just give you a brief update on some work we're doing on 2 recycling depots at the North Surrey Recycling and Waste Center and also the Langley Recycling and Waste Center, and getting any feedback from council on these preliminary concept designs that we have for you. So you're all familiar with this. Metro Vancouver is made up of 23 member jurisdictions, roughly 2.8 million people, and 50% of the provincial population. Sorry, I'm just trying to make this go. The region provides a range of services, and you're all familiar with these, but at a high level, it's the services that are best provided at the regional level rather than at a municipal level. Our group, and as a region, we've been very, very successful with respect to waste reduction and recycling, and we have a solid waste management plan that was approved in 2011 that set a goal of 10% reduction in waste. We've achieved 11%. It also set a recycling goal of 80%, and we're sitting at 65%, which isn't 80%, but it's roughly twice the Canadian average. It's very successful. We're North American leading. The region has a series, we call them recycling and waste centers. People sometimes describe them as transfer stations, but the reason we call them recycling and waste centers is recycling is key with respect to the services that are provided at these facilities. And in total, there are 6 recycling and waste centers that are owned and operated by Metro Vancouver. Operations are all through contractors. We have a waste energy facility that's located in Burnaby, and then we work very closely with the City of Vancouver that owns and operates the Vancouver South Transfer Station and the Vancouver landfill. It's a system that's consistent across the region. The prices are the same, the rules are the same, and what this presentation is about is ensuring the recycling services at all those facilities are the same. Our system is a public solid waste system, so it's directed. All the decisions that are made with respect to this system are made by the Metro Vancouver Board, which you have representatives on. And these are some of the benefits. There's free recycling drop-off at our facilities that's funded through garbage tipping fees, and you'll see the kind of investments that we're making. We have a resilient, reliable waste and recycling system. It's cost-effective, transparent, and consistent across all the facilities. And just to give you an example, the tipping fees, so the system is funded through tipping fees, which are paid by all users, including municipalities. And if you look at the tipping fees for our system over the last 10 years, they've actually increased at less than the rate of inflation, so only about 2% per year over the last 10 years. It's a system that's available to all residents and businesses, and as you saw on that map, the facilities are strategically located across the region. So what this is about is developing recycling depots at each of these facilities. So of the 6 recycling and waste centers, 4 of them already have recycling depots at them. And the recycling depot is a facility that's ahead of the waste scales that people can come and drop off a full range of recyclables for free without coming in and paying tipping fees. And these are pictures from United Boulevard, which was opened in March of 2022. And then Central Surrey, which is at 154 and 67, and it's quite close to Township of Langley, so I encourage you to go see it, but it was opened in September of 2022. And these are our first new facilities in 20 years, and they're second to none with respect to the services provided. So the 2 new recycling depots, and again, our goal is to have, and it's such a simple goal, is to have consistent services across all our facilities that maximize opportunities for recycling. Full suite of recyclables, ahead of the scale, safe and convenient, and space for expansion. What we're seeing is each time we build a new facility, there's more opportunities with respect to recycling. So these are the concept designs. So the first facility is what we call the North Surrey Recycling and Waste Center, which is located on Golden Ears Way at 192nd Street. And basically in the December of 2022, we purchased the land that's within that blue square there. And so that's from the City of Surrey. And of course, we should have bought it when we built the facility originally because we bought the land from the City of Surrey at that time. And it provides the opportunity, the building to the east of it is the existing transfer building, and it has some recycling services inside, but they're limited and they're all behind the scales. So it provides the opportunity to provide recycling services ahead of the scales. And this is the concept design, and at a high level, it's maximizing recycling opportunity, having below grade bins, so we have one facility in North Vancouver where people have to walk up on steps in order to access some of the bins. Everything is accessible from ground level. People will have the opportunity to either come in and just use the recycling services or use the recycling services and then go into the remainder of the facility. And what we see at North Shore, United Boulevard, up to half of the customers are just coming to use the recycling services. This is the Langley facility, which is located on 272nd Street in Langley, and it's a facility that's just used by small vehicles. So we have our major facilities used by all customers. The Langley, Central Surrey, and Maple Ridge are just used by non-mechanically unloading vehicles, so basically pickup trucks and vans and trailers. And this is the concept design for any of you familiar with this facility. Currently, the entrance to the scales is at the west of the site, and so all the people come in this area. They go over the scales, they come in. Again, there's some recycling services within the facility, but nothing that's ahead of the scales. So the concept is change the west edge of the site, I'm trying to point at it, the west edge of the site into a dedicated recycling area, recycling depot ahead of the scales. And then if people come in, they can use the recycling depot. If they want to go and use the garbage and paid recycling services, they would exit, turn left, and come back in. And then we have the weigh scale system where people pay to drop off material at the eastern edge of the site. And you can see one of the things we've done as we've developed new facilities. I was wondering what the banging was previously, but now I'll move it so I'm not doing the same banging. But the goal is to make sure there's no queuing that backs up onto the street. So we've done that at all our other facilities as we've developed these new recycling systems. And this is just a closer look. One of the things that we're expecting that we don't have at our existing facilities, mattresses now are dropped off at a fee. So if you drop off a mattress, you pay $15, and it actually costs us close to $40 to process that mattress. But in order to encourage people not to dump it in a ditch, we charge a discounted rate. And again, that's funded through tipping fees for garbage that everybody pays. But we expect mattresses to go into an extended producer responsibility program. So it's a material we'd move into the recycling areas across our system. So you see a mattress area in this slide. Next step, we're working on design and municipal permitting processes. I talked to Roland just before the meeting. What we've seen is Langley staff have been very, very collaborative and cooperative with respect to making that permitting process work as smoothly as possible. So we're expecting to be under construction for the Langley site late 2024 into 2025. The North Surrey site is a little more complex because there's a rezoning requirement associated with it. And that's it.
Great. I have a couple questions from council. Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Really glad to see this layout. I use the transfer station, and we don't have garbage out there unless it's private garbage and limited recycling. So you have to go through and declare that you're going to go and and you're doing the loop 2 or 3 times sometimes. So all the recyclable stuff's before the scale and just the garbage after the scale. Thank you very much.
I think there's deep appreciation for the services Metro provides in this regard, and I definitely feel the same as well. It's great to have Metro here in the Township of Langley handling this to such a significant degree for us. Councillor Martins?
Thank you, and thank you for coming today for your presentation. I live up in North Langley, so the North Surrey site is my usual location, and I appreciate the fact that the concepts are changing where you're putting the recycling services ahead of the scales, because that's been a deterrent for me. I generally go to the return it depot, and I'm curious if you can, it's getting into the weeds a bit, like it's actually kind of fun to go there and see all the categories of bins where you can drop stuff off and how much I'm able to not put in the landfill as a result. Will it be as extensive? Like there's paper, obviously, cardboard, and like I'd just like to know if you can maybe speak to, because like textiles is one that I can put in the return at depot. It would be great if that was provided at your recycling depots.
Yeah, what I would say is what you would expect, like if you went today to our United Boulevard facility, you would see a broader range of recyclables than at any other facility in the Lower Mainland.
Thank you. So I'm going to go visit it and get a sense of it firsthand, and I'm really glad to hear that. This is excellent in general, environmentally, and all the rest. So thank you for coming to present, and great initiatives.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Popta?
Thank you for being here. Similar line of question. Has the program expanded to styrofoam recycling for the Metro, like for this type of facility?
Yeah, at our facilities, we accept expanded polystyrene, and it's a bit complicated because it's a Recycle BC product, And the result of that is that only the residential expanded polystyrene is accepted through the Recycle BC program. At our facilities, United Boulevard, Central Surrey, North Shore, what we do is we have free drop-off for residents, so that's free. We'll take a tiny bit of commercial expanded polystyrene in the recycling depot, and then we have a secondary paid drop-off of expanded polystyrene if it's large quantities of commercial, but absolutely we accept it. And
Okay.
we will at these facilities also.
Perfect. And sorry, and just to clarify, textiles as well?
Textiles also, yeah. And the something we're working on right now, which we piloted on the North Shore, we're working to expand again to all our facilities, is the more kind of bulky items that for reuse. So we've been working on furniture, small appliances, those things where people can come. We're working with nonprofits where they'll set up, people will come and say, is this reusable or not? And then they'll receive it and then distribute it through their distribution systems, because we see, like to your point, what we see the customer's interest is one facility where you don't have that anxiety about whether they're going to take it or not. Like it's either it can go for reuse, it can go to recycling, or if none of those options work, it can go to disposal, all at the one facility. So that's our goal, and that's really what it looks like on North Shore and United Boulevard and Central Surrey.
And these new facilities.
Absolutely, that's the goal.
Perfect.
Everyone the same.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Paul Henderson, you now are another type of hero, because in 1972 at the Summit Series, with 34 seconds to go, Paul Henderson scored the winning goal. Hey, I know that wasn't you, so thank you very much for coming, but you get that all the time. I think that you are a hero in your own sense, you and your staff and the work you've done. I sit on the Metro Zero Waste Committee and the work you do. This is exciting. I've already talked to you. I'm glad you're here today. We went for a tour, as I said, to Mayor and Council at last council meeting of the Vancouver landfill, located in Delta, and what you're doing there and how your rehabilitation process. But my question to you, other than I'm excited about this, what can you tell me about Metro Vancouver's place amongst the world in getting recycling and zero waste?
Yeah, and we're definitely, what we see is we're North American leading. So anywhere I go, as an example, I'm speaking in Ontario next month. We regularly speak at conferences across North America. We're absolutely North American leading. When you look to some European experience, like all of us have traveled in Europe to some extent, and you'll see that there are some programs that are more successful probably there, and really focusing on the amount of waste that we generate. That's the key thing that as a region, as a country, we really need to work on. But if you look across North America, across Canada, absolutely we're a leading jurisdiction, if not the leading jurisdiction.
Between you and your colleagues with liquid waste, those are my favorite conferences to go to, either garbage or sewer and water. And if I did want to also say one last thing is that what you and your staff are now promoting is more and more people through the ads you'll see on TV or the paper about recycling or the way they use products and other things. It's so important that the public, if they're listening today, is how you recycle, how you reuse, and how you protect the services that we provide. Thank you, and thank you. Say hello to your colleagues at Metro Vancouver for the mayor and myself.
Thank you. Councillor Kunst.
Yeah, thank you. I actually went to a zero waste conference, and I had no idea how much there is to learn about recycling and about all the work that's being done in the Metro Vancouver area. And I'm really glad Langley's going to take care of its own garbage and recycling. My question actually is about the construction industry, and what is Metro Vancouver, because I don't think this would be accommodating construction waste, and I've been hearing from the construction industry what a huge issue it is for some of these sites to get rid of all of either the building that was demolished or some of the construction waste that they have. So I don't know where that's at.
Yeah, no, these are all excellent questions. That's another excellent question. The construction industry, you're right. Metro Vancouver's work around that isn't the same as it is with respect to managing regular garbage and providing those recycling services. Our work around the construction industry, there's a regulatory role that it's not my group, it's another group, but there's a regulatory role around licensing facilities. And then beyond that, our role is really a collaboration and information sharing role. And just as an example of that, we have something called the Industry Advisory Committee, and it's been so it's made up of garbage and recycling collectors and processors, and that's been identified as a really key issue. And kind of the challenges, there's a combination of challenges. One is on facilities, so facilities that are able to function and be able to sort materials effectively, and there's all kinds of challenges with respect to that. And then another is with respect to markets, and particularly wood. What we're seeing, and everything's affected by something else, and the wood industry, you know, you're seeing users of wood as a fuel source shutting down over time, and so that's very challenging. Of course, there's many players that are involved in those in that impact, and so the piece we're doing is we're working closely with industry to try to look for solutions. But I agree, it's a challenging situation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you for your presentation. Thanks for coming and giving us the heads up on the construction and the expansion. And it's great to see Langley becoming on the radar to get the same service as everybody else. Obviously, that's a great thing, and really appreciate that work. Thanks.
Great. And if there's questions through staff, subsequently, if council has additional questions, just feed them to your staff, and we're happy to answer
great.
them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes delegations and presentations. I move on to reports to council. Item E1, temporary use permit application number 8. There's two options. Does anybody wish to move authorize of issuance? It's moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Van Popta. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and just wanted to thank staff because I noticed that in some of the conditions that several of the items that were brought up at the last council meeting regarding the last TUP were preemptively included, so that's great. I did just have a question through yourself to staff in regards to the fact that the westernmost entrance and exit for this site is in pretty close proximity to the main entrance to Aldergrove Regional Park. So I'm wondering if, as part of the application, if a traffic management plan was a part of the conditions, or if that is something that staff thought was worth looking at, just in regards to potentially some negative interactions between big trucks and people coming in and out of the park.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Pratt. The application is received and reviewed through Development Engineering as well as our transportation group. That item, and from being out on the site there yesterday, hasn't come up as a concern. There are some traffic turning templates included in the report and as a requirement. However, as part of the permitting process, your council support that, they'll be reviewed again, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Martins?
Yeah, thank you. And a question, if I may, through the chair to staff. I know this is non-ALR land, but I believe there's ALR surrounding it on the west, east, and north. Is that correct?
Mr. Cooner?
Through your worship to Councillor Martins, that is correct.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just wondering, because I know this is a temporary truck park application here, but I know in the staff report on page 4, it says the site is proposed to be paved to accommodate parking and drive aisles. Paving doesn't sound terribly temporary to me. And I'm wondering why we went that route rather than gravel, which would allow for drainage and the runoff from truck debris to drain rather than running over into the potential ALR sites adjacent.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Martins. As you've noted, and as Mr. Cooner outlined, this property to the west is the land reserves of the proposed 15-meter landscape buffer, and then 10 meters to the north and the west. Dust resurface is a requirement typically of these permits. In this case, the proponent has elected to go with an asphalt surface. There's some benefits of going with an asphalt surface, especially in this area. One is that the runoff, as you mentioned, that can be collected in a more regularized pattern, and then pursuant to the requirements of the subdivision development servicing bylaw, can be treated with oil interceptors and other items in that case. So there are some benefits to that, as well as mentioned by council last time, some of the items with respect to tracking of debris onto adjacent highways, Your Worship.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate staff's comments. That helps me understand why we are considering that. We definitely need this truck parking, and as long as we're doing it in a way that's respective of the environment and the neighbors, I think that's great.
Councillor Richter?
Yes, I have 3 questions through you to staff. Question number 1, I know this is a temporary use permit, but can we get public input on it? Can council send it for public input?
Mr. Cooner?
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, the application can be referred for public input opportunity potentially as a condition, but we would caution mayor and council on that item, as historically we haven't referred any of the temporary use permits for any type of public input opportunity.
Okay, question number 2, can council restrict this for use by Langley truck owners only?
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, that is a good question and a good initiative. However, there's certain confines we have to abide by pursuant to the Local Government Act, and also legal implications. One of the legal implications is the Charter of Rights and Freedom, limiting it to places of origin. There could be potentially a condition imposed that prefers Township of Langley businesses, but not restrict.
Okay, but preferring the township businesses, how does that fit in with Charter of Rights and Freedoms?
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, the argument could be made that we're discriminating based on place of residence. If there's some preference to certain parking stalls for Township of Langley businesses, that could be an item to be considered, rather than restricting the residents, the actual truck parking to specifically Township of Langley businesses.
Okay, so what wording would you suggest then in order to, we've had several delegations to council from truckers groups indicating the need for truck facilities to help Langley truckers. And, I think our job is to help Langley truckers, not regional truckers.
Is that a question?
Or is that a rec?
Yeah, I'd like to know how to word this.
Yeah. So I had similar questions. I think it's come up. I think it's a great point to raise. How would it legally be enforced as a condition of the permit? Are we going to be inspecting their customer roll? Are we going to have the right to inspect their customer roll? Or are we going to be checking license plates to see where the truck is registered to? Like, how would this be enforced upon the permit?
Through your worship to Councillor Richter, your worship actually raises some good concerns, the enforceability of it. However, if council so desires, there could be an avenue to say a certain amount of stalls, for example, 5 stalls can be reserved for Township of Langley businesses, and we leave it with the proponent to ensure that those stalls are for Township of Langley businesses.
But I was under the impression from previous delegations that Township of Langley businesses need a lot more than 5 stalls. Is that not correct?
To your worship, to Councillor Richter, that's correct. I was just picking an arbitrary number to assist in attaching a condition if council there so desires.
If you wish to make an amendment or add a condition, Councillor Richter, no issues there.
Okay, I'll give that some thought and let other people speak, but I do have one more question here. I note that there is a significant number of trees on this property, 97. How are we going to ensure that those 97 trees are not removed accidentally?
Mr. Cooner?
Through your worship, Councillor Richter, this township standard practice with respect to the permit itself, there's a requirement through the permit for a landscape plan that has reviewed and will preserve those trees as identified in those buffer areas, as well as a double check prior to building permit issuance, your worship.
Okay, and is there any setback around those trees in order to ensure that they do get enough water to support them if asphalt is going down?
Thank you, worship. Through to Councillor Richter, has identified a 15-meter buffer to the east, 10-meter buffers to the north and the west, and reviewed by, proposed by the proponent's qualified professional and reviewed by staff. And the areas that are outside of the proposed paved areas are meant to accommodate preservation of those trees, your worship.
Okay, thank you.
There's no other speakers, so if you wish to move your additional amendment.
Yes, I would like to move a motion that council ask for a public input opportunity, Part A, a public input opportunity on this, and Part B, that preferential use of this area be available for Langley truck owners.
So why don't we do each one separately?
Okay.
Would you wish to proceed with the first one? Do you wish to move that?
Yes,
So you're referring this for a public input opportunity.
for a public input opportunity.
Is there a seconder to that? I'm not seeing a seconder. And the second one again, please?
Is that preferential use of this temporary use permit area be reserved for Langley truck owners.
Seconded by Councillor Kunst. Do you wish to speak to it any further, Councillor Richter?
Well, I think we have an obligation to solve, or to help to try to solve, the issues that Langley residents and truck owners are having. I don't believe it's our job to solve the issue for the region. I think that's been discussed several times at council previously, and I think that Metro or somebody else in the region needs to step up, but we should be trying to do what we can for the Langley residents and truck owners that are affected.
Right. Councillor Van Popta?
As the motion is written, are we opening ourselves up to legal implications?
Mr. Coonan?
Your Worship, to Councillor Van Popta, we may suggest, to subject to legal input may be required just to ensure the validity of it and the enforceability of it.
Okay, I'm willing to make that amendment.
Okay, we can come back to you. I mean, if it succeeds, we could add an amendment to make it subject to legal advice, so that we could re-amend. We could do another amendment, because you can't amend an amendment. So we took that out at the beginning of the term. So we would have to process this amendment, and then if it succeeds, you could make that amendment to add legal advice. As Councillor Richter seems okay with that. Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I think the spirit of the idea to help predominantly Langley businesses is a good one. I do have a bit of an issue when we get presentations on this particular topic and they assign a specific number of stalls that we are short or something like that. I'm curious, because we're going to provide stalls, we're going to help chip away at the issue, but there's always going to be a need that probably changes, grows, shrinks. And so it's kind of like the housing crisis. We don't know exactly the number of homes we need to provide, but we just need to provide more homes. And so in the supply and demand argument, I would just lean towards the side of the people who are going to be running this operation. They know where there's the demand, and I would leave it up to them.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, well, I just want to point out, this is sitting right on the Langley, or pretty close to the Langley-Abbotsford border. And we have a Langley issue that's up to us to help solve for Langley residents. I don't think our job is to solve the issue for Abbotsford residents. I think that's what Abbotsford Council exists to do. So I would be very concerned if all the spots that are going to be created by this were taken up by Abbotsford companies and not Langley companies.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I just wanted a clarification on the motion again, or amendment, if it could be either
Go
read
ahead.
out or explained.
Ms. Bauer, could you read that back again, please?
The motion is that preference be given for the area to be reserved for Langley truck owners.
So my question, if I may, through the chair, we're talking about wording, preference. That could be 1, that could be 100. I'm just trying to interpret that, if I may, through the chair.
To Your Worship, to Councillor Ferguson, that is correct. That could be open to interpretation. We'd be working with the proponent to have some type of reassurance on what they interpreted as well and how we'll be enforcing it.
Thank you.
Councillor Bailey?
I love the idea. I'm just wondering how you would do that. I would be more supportive of a report from staff on, is this feasible? If so, how would you do that? I would be wary of reserving stalls for specific people, and then when they're, say they're long-haul truckers, or that they're not going to be in there, that would leave empty stalls and that. So I would be more in favor of getting a staff report on if it's possible and if it is, how you would be able to do this. So you're probably going to fill every one of those spots every night. I'd rather see that than empty stalls sitting there and not being utilized and other truckers trying to hunt spots.
Yeah, appreciate that. Councillor Van Popta?
One other thing to consider as well is quite often truckers don't own their trucks, so it might be a truck from a company in Alberta or another jurisdiction, but it is a Langley resident that needs to park their truck. So we do need to balance that opinion as well, that it could be a Langley resident, but not a Langley registered vehicle.
I appreciate that. I don't support the amendment as much as I feel strongly about not solving the problem for the region. I don't see it as practically enforceable. I don't think we have the right to pull their customer list and audit their customer list to confirm compliance with the TUP. We didn't do it to the TUP that was just approved for another site. It wasn't done for them. I think there's other ways and other opportunities that can get to what Councillor Richter is trying to do, and I think we can achieve it in a different way, which I'm working on. So I don't support doing this. It's unusual within a land use decision to prescribe that only housing is being built for Langley residents, or only Langley residents can use this park, or something like that. So only Langley residents can use this bus. So I think at this point I don't support it, and I'm going to call the question on the amendment to E1. Well, I voted the wrong way, so that it's defeated with Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Martins, Councillor Ferguson opposed. Ms. Bauer, you have me as opposed? Yeah, thank you. So that carries back to the E1 as unamended. Councillor Martins.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Woodward, for your last comments. And I actually had a question about that. You said that you thought there might be other ways that might work better to benefit Langley truck drivers. I was wondering if perhaps you could give a little more insight into that, because that is why I didn't support this amendment, because I understand there might be another solution. If you're willing to provide a bit more information, that'd be great.
There's no information to provide in the context of this permit. It'll be coming forward hopefully soon. So with that, I'll call the question on this tip. Councillor Richter, this would be your third time. Oh, no, go ahead.
No, my motion was disposed of. I'm just wondering why we can give priority access to Langley residents for all our recreation services, but we're not going to give priority access to this particular land use for Langley residents.
No, I think
the logic escapes me.
I think the logic is relatively obvious, actually. If the Township of Langley owns the pool facility, it operates the facility, and it can choose the policies for that facility. To place a condition of similar objectives on a landowner and the enforceability of that within a temporary use permit process or a rezoning process, I think Mr. Cooner has covered that. That's a different animal.
No, I don't think he's covered it to my satisfaction. Thank you.
Okay, we'll vote against it. I'm going to call the question on E1. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. And move on to item reports to council. Enhanced special events, Christmas in Williams Park. I will move the recommendation. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
I'm strongly opposed to this. I think it's wrong. I think it's disrespectful to residents. I think it's going to be incredibly expensive for the township to do. And I am absolutely surprised that this particular report came in the format it did when there were 3 options. Why wasn't council given the choice to choose which of the 3 options instead of having that choice made for us before it even, when the agenda was being put together? Who made that choice and why?
Mr. Cooner, what was the process to arrive at the recommendation on the agenda? I mean, if it can be defeated by council and council can pursue the other options that are outlined in the report, I've moved the staff recommendation. Mr. Cooner?
Yes, Your Worship. That is the staff recommendation. It's within council's prerogative if they choose a different option. The option is available within the report. Staff based recommending option 3 on the fact that this will ensure a long-term plan for Christmas in William Parks and provide some certainty for the public.
And it's my understanding that given the decision which I believe was requested by the similar advocates to not proceed with the lights display at Arboretum, that there's a significant allocation of events budget specific to this purpose. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Yeah. Councillor Kunst?
This is a really sad moment. You know, if I think about the fact that this is actually going to happen, that we are going to take over a society who doesn't want, they want to continue doing, they just want the staff support as they always have. So, like, this is, I can't support this obviously, but I can't also not, you know, speak to it. And I hope that we're not going to, you know, do this with other societies in the Township of Langley and just take them over and have staff run them, when we have volunteers in the community that want to keep on doing it. It's utter, complete, makes no sense to me. So I will not be supporting it.
Councillor Martins?
Thank you. Yeah, and I echo what I just heard from Councillor Kunst. I don't support this. This is local government overreach. I hear a lot in the media about government overreach, and now we've got a municipal government taking over something that has been run for years by a capable group of volunteers who've given their heart and soul to this. And I think it's extremely offensive. And I am really sorry to those volunteers that are listening to this debate, and I agree it is a very sad day. What I'm really not understanding about this is I might be more on board with the staff recommendation if I saw economically it made sense to the township, but even the economics here, the numbers aren't adding up. Right now, we're looking at a $50,000 commitment in staff resources, if I'm correct. Perhaps there's a room to improve traffic control, and I feel I was reading in the report something about 20,000. I might be off on the number. But that now we're at 70,000. How is it better to spend $250,000 over $70,000 when I'm looking at tax dollars and we've got limited resources to work with? And every council meeting, we're here debating matters. And right now, we're looking at throwing out $250,000 or the net being $180,000 for party planning and taking over an event that's been working successfully in the past. So if staff could please enlighten me what I'm missing in the accounting of this report that then makes sense to shift course and do this. How is it beneficial financially?
Mr. Cooner?
The clarification staff can provide is there's two separate items. The first item is a capital expense, which is $140,000 for the procurement of the lights and decoration and supplies. Then the actual operating cost of $110,000. That would be the difference. There is the capital expenditure of $140,000 is a one-time expenditure, and then the operating itself would be $110,000.
Okay, so thank you for the clarification. That's what I read in the report. It still doesn't make sense numbers-wise. We, as a council, we participated in a debate about whether or not to go ahead with hiring more police officers in the township, that we were trying to sharpen our pencils and reduce taxes. And that was a terrible idea. We needed to go without police, but yet we're throwing $250,000 into party planning. And I'm so offended by this. The logic has not been explained to me on why it makes sense fiscally. It's irresponsible, and it is local government overreach. It's terrible.
Councillor Van Popta?
I believe everybody here at this table, except for one, voted for the budget this year. And in that budget was an events category, which I believe most of this funding would come out of. Community events budget.
That's correct.
That aside,
it's already budgeted for. That's correct.
I've always had concerns over this event. I loved it, over the past 30 years myself with my kids. The challenge that I have is that I know people that live in that area, down that one-way area, and it has significant safety and traffic challenges. And over the course of the last couple of years, different techniques have been tried, different traffic management, different ticketing, and all sorts of things have been tried that have still not addressed the concerns, even of those who do support the event, which I know we all here do, It still didn't ever solve the problem of the residents that live there. This year, we had complaints of people driving down the wrong way of the road to get out of an hour-long lineup in order for them to be able to get to their home. People can't have company over. And so this comes down to a management. It's not so much about who's running the event, but how the event is being run. And without us having the jurisdiction to control how the event is being run, we're not addressing the safety challenges and the concerns. And so I do think that this event has gotten, rightfully so, it has gotten very big and very popular. And I thank the society for getting it to that point. But at some point, now that Langley is sitting at 150,000 people, plus attracting, due to the information that went out last fall that this council was canceling Christmas, the influx and popularity that it attracted from across the Lower Mainland made this event very, very dangerous and an inconvenience for those that live there, and we can't ignore those residents. And so I do support taking this over, and I really do believe that staff will be able to put out a volunteers call to help manage the event, and I hope that those 30 to 40 people that have been volunteering this past year and this past couple years will put their hand up and still support this event. And this isn't about taking away, this is about managing something that has gotten, we've created, this, it's bigger than it can be managed by a society at this point. And unfortunately, we do need to take this in-house now, especially because I do think that we have to control the attendance, we have to control the safety aspects of traffic management. And even though there's quite a few people down there that do support it, we have to be able to get those people home, and without that control, we're not going to be able to do that.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to, first of all, clarification. It's not really a big surprise that this report is on the agenda today. The recommendations might be the surprise, but on the executive summary on page 1, E2, that on March the 11th, 2024, Council directed staff to meet with the Christmas and Williams Park, the Society, to go over some things. And there was a delegation, I guess last year, to, I believe, save Christmas in Williams Park, from what I remember. And the process went through that we would meet the people, our staff meet with the people and talk about something else. Another option was, I believe, to think about the Arboretum, Derek Doubleday. And I didn't think that was a good idea, and I'm sure many of the people at this table might have thought that already, and the powers of wisdom prevailed, and it didn't come up today in this report. If it had come up today in this report, I would not be surprised. And also, I'm not surprised by other things. We have notices of motions come up. We have table items that come up on the very same day that we vote. So as far as police and fire and protection, we added those services to our budget last year, and we are also adding a gym to the RCMP as well in the same facility. So we're spending money for our protective services, which we value significantly. I too am a little bit caught up with the fact that there's challenges with something like this. I also want to point out that a couple of weeks ago we had something called the Langley Walk. It's one of the largest walks we've had in Langley for many, many years, and initially that was volunteer-led, managed, and everything. Over the years, the Township of Langley took it up. We run the Langley Walk now. We also were involved in other facilities and other events that were volunteer, which we've taken over as well. As I remember from last year's, and I could be, maybe I'm mixing it up, but at least there was a concern about keeping Christmas and Williams Park and saving it last year. And it's like any other organization, whether it's the Langley Senior Centers, where I was president, whether it's Rotary or Scouts or soccer or all sorts. It's always tougher to get people, for volunteers to help out. And that was, again, the case as well with, I believe, Christmas and Williams Park, as presented last year. I guess I have a quick question as far as through the chairless staff. Does the Christmas and Williams Park provide the staff, as other, same as I did with other non-profit organizations, with an audited balance sheet and financial report?
Through your worship to Council Ferguson, can you just repeat the question one more time?
Oh, does the Christmas and Williams provide the Township of Langley, of course, and also public information regarding a balance sheet and financial report?
Through your worship to Council Ferguson, our understanding it's a non-profit society. We do not request, and they haven't provided the financial disclosures. Is that what you're asking? But the items we requested during the meetings with respect to finances were provided.
Do they have an annual general meeting and all the requirements under the Act, and also an audited balance sheet?
It's a society. We assume that they have those items. We have not reviewed their bylaws. We would defer back to the actual society where they conduct their annual general meetings.
Okay, because I know that when I was chair of the senior center, we had to have an audited sheet, and we had to provide an annual general meeting. We had to also provide a record for the membership, and anyway, that's neither here nor there. I've always wondered about those, and I'll ask that of other societies as well. So this is a tough decision to make. I think the dollars are kind of thrown around who's doing what. That's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, first I find it interesting that right now it's a valued thing in the community, and now it's being referred to as a party. I find that a little odd. Okay, how it can transfer when people are going to run the same event but with different handlers. Now it's a party. But I want to get to the thing. This is an evolution. If you look at this thing started 33 years ago, it is now fundamentally a different creature. It cannot exist without support from the Township of Langley. And I know that if I was in that position and I had 35 to 40,000 people coming to my event, I would be mining that ruthlessly to see if volunteers could do that, because I know from practical experience of over decades that volunteers can set up and take down Christmas lights. Being done for a long time by the firefighters of this province without one professional doing anything about it. And that includes Vancouver Parks Board and Vancouver City workers. So I see this as an evolution, that if a society can no longer take care of it, and I take my hat off to the volunteers that have been doing it. I know what volunteer work looks like. I know what it looks like to be out there in minus 15 degree weather, because I did that for well over 3 decades. And I know what it takes to be dressed, and I know that there are people that do it. And when I see that there's a society that can no longer exist in a function without fundamental, and I mean 50 grand is fundamental, without fundamental support from the township, and they're saying they're struggling more and more and more getting volunteers, then I say it's time to evolve one more time, allow them the opportunity to still be involved in something that they love, and change this in a direction that will be able to be planned and can be sustainable.
Thank you. Councillor Richter?
The last time we discussed this, I recall Councillor Van Popta specifically wanting a survey done. And that survey was done. This is in our report on page 3. And 130 ballots were mailed out to the residents surrounding this event between 65th Avenue and 70A Avenue, 232nd Street and 244th Street, asking if they supported the event or not. The results of those ballots were 69% support the event, and only 19 ballots, or 31%, didn't support it. So I don't understand why we're ignoring the wishes of the many in support of the wishes of the few who might be personal people that we know. That doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't sound very democratic. So, and now what we're basically doing We have $140,000 here to replace the lights that these dedicated volunteers have spent years collecting and curating. So we're going to spend $140,000 on lights, and we're going to spend $110,000 on operating this event. That's $250,000 instead of $50,000. Like, where's the economic sense in that? $250,000? What? Are the taxpayers made of money? No, the taxpayers aren't. And this council has been spending money like it's going out of style. This is just one more example of it. So, Councillor Van Popta, yes, this is taking away. It is taking away. It is mean-spirited politics that is victimizing long-term dedicated volunteers. It is wrong to do.
Switch you once.
And I am not supporting this. It's just wrong.
Yeah, no, it's great. Great. Okay, so I think that's all the speakers. I'm going to weigh in here a bit. So, Mr. Cooner, believe that the $50,000 has been referenced on numerous occasions. Do you know, as I discovered last year, do you know of any motion of council approving $50,000 before last year?
Prior to last year, no, there has been no resolution approving $50,000 to Christmas in Williams Park.
Interesting. This year, there was $75,000 put in the budget for an event similar to this. 7 members of council voted for it. 8, I believe, sorry, voted for that budget. This would amount to $35,000 additional operating to be probably found within the existing envelope of the $370,000 that we budget for community events. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Correct. So no taxes are going up to do this. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Okay,
it's
great.
within the allocated community events budget.
So I think some facts are important here, and I think it's concerning to me that somewhere along the way, somebody decided to spend $50,000 of taxpayer money for an event at Williams Park without council authorization, apparently. And so it's up to council now to make a decision. Do we expand and grow the event, given that it has become so large, that it is putting significant stress on the infrastructure around it? I believe that some other policies need to be brought in place to see the event succeed in the future, and I think could become a significant benefit to the community. I think, as been mentioned, it's dependent upon township staff, and it's at a township park. Sounds like a township event to me. So for that, I'll call the question on E2. And that carries with Councillor Richter, Councillor Kuntz, Councillor Martins opposed. Item F1, Official Community Plan Amendment, Rezoning Application Number 100262, Bylaw Number 5955, 5956. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Rent, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on F1? Seeing none, call the question on F1. And that carries unanimously. Item F2, Official Community Plan Amendment, Rezoning Application Number 100285, Bylaw Number 6013-6014 for 103 townhouse units. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on F2? Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
Just looking at the site plan and then also looking at the aerial photos and seeing the tree count, we've got a significant amount of trees on the site. But there's also in the site plan a community park down the direct center of it. I'm going to assume that at this point we can't guarantee how many trees will be retained, but the intent with the landscape plan is that we would retain some of those mature trees.
Through your worship, that's correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or discussion on F2? Seeing none, I'll call the question on F2. Yes? Yeah, I was going to do it at 3:30. That's all right. I'll call the question on F2 again. Sorry, do that again. Councillor Richter, F2? Yeah. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Item bylaws for first, second, and third reading. Item G1. Is there any wish to move that? Moved by Councillor Rent. Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on G1? Seeing none, call the question on G1. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. And let's take that break now, and we'll come back for item H1, which I suspect will take some time. Let's come back at 3:30 if we can, please. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Cooner, we get back underway. Item H1, bylaws for consideration at second reading, the Booth, Fernridge, and Rynn neighborhood plans, bylaw number 6007, 6008, 6009, 6010 for second reading. I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Rynn. Ms. Bauer, I believe I provided a significant series of potential amendments, so we'll definitely start with those, but we'll go with speakers first, but I just want to give you that you do have those and those are ready to go. Okay, so we'll definitely be starting with those. Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, just, I'm not sure about process, but yeah, I've got a few amendments to throw at this one too,
Okay,
please.
does anybody else have any amendments? Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I also have some.
Okay. Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, just a quick question to, this will be, there will be a public hearing on the Brookswood neighborhood plans.
Mr. Cooner?
Through your worship to Councillor Kuntz, that is correct. The scheduled public hearing hopefully will on June 10th.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I believe that's slightly altered from the previous timeline given to council, is that correct?
Yes, your worship.
Yeah, which is certainly, council can debate that, but it would be scheduled on June 10th unless council were to change that.
That is correct, your worship.
Correct, yeah. So Ms. Bauer, could you please bring up the First Amendment? And I believe, Mr. Cooner, could you give this one some context, please?
Your worship, this amendment will essentially match the interfaces in the existing area and line up with the designations from across the street. So this will be a smooth transition from the apartment designation to row homes and townhouses rather than having it from apartment to single family.
Yeah, I believe this, I did look into this and appreciate that. It's make this change for the public hearing. These are all, of course, amendments. I won't say it every time. These are amendments that can be adjudicated and have a month to process for the public hearing. Is there a second? I'll move it. Is there a second? Or seconded by Councillor Rynn? Is there any discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question on this amendment on each one. And that carries. Councillor Richter opposed. If we could move on to the second one, Ms. Bauer, please. Yeah, I'm going to move that all residential land use designations more explicitly require street patterns that are front-facing, rear-loaded with straight and aligned grids and municipal rear lanes to maximize future flexibility, laneway housing options, street trees, and boulevard planning areas, and neighborhood connectivity. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Van Popta. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question on this amendment. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Ms. Bauer, do you have the third amendment, please? Third amendment, I'll move this, that the maximum density for townhouse development be changed to 20 UPA, seconded by Councillor Rynn. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Councillor Kunst, go ahead.
Yeah, so the only thing I'm having a little bit of a struggle is that you're making amendments, but I don't know what it is that you're actually amending because I don't see the actual first thing. So it's going from 20...
It's currently at, Mr. Cooner, it's at 18 currently, is that correct?
That is correct, your worship.
And okay, so sometimes when because it's not my wheelhouse, I try really hard to, I need more time, and sometimes I'd like to hear from the public on how these things might change and why it's either a good idea or it's not a good idea. So I'm probably going to vote for this, but this is the challenge I'm having with just seeing these amendments right now and not being able to really thoroughly understand truly what I'm and the impact that I might be voting on. So or do you have more amendments? Yeah. And you said at some point they can be changed back if...
That's correct. So Mr. Could maybe explain it. So the way the process that this council has embarked upon, which I find quite constructive, is first reading, a public open house, get that feedback, amend second reading, and then the amendments are adjudicated at a public hearing and they can be changed at third or even final. So you get a lot of input on the changes rather than these being made at third with no input on the changes beyond the public hearing. So it gives a long period of time, about a month, to look at the agenda, look at the implications and the changes to the plans that are then going to public hearing, which will then be subject of third reading after public hearing approximately 6 weeks from now. And so there's plenty of time to make an amendment to move it back or change or tweak some of these amendments at that time based on the public hearing input and based on a re-review of the open house input. Much of this is derived from the open house input.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. So any other discussion on this amendment? Call the question on this amendment. This carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Ms. Bauer, amendment number 4. And this one does have some others that come after it. And this is to reduce the minimum lot sizes down to more affordable, attainable forms with some flexibility coming. I'll move this, seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on reducing lot sizes? Seeing none, I'll call the question on that amendment. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Amendment number 5, that permitted building envelopes for single-family lots, if that's what the developer chooses to use with the available designations, be reduced for additional mature tree preservation planting spaces and pervious surface areas. I'll move that. Is there a second to that? Seconded by Councillor Van Popta. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, call the question on that amendment. Councillor Pratt. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. And amendment number 6, that the SMU 2 and 3 designations be updated to allow and prefer more affordable attached housing types yielding similar projected densities not undermined by Housing Statute Residential Development Act 2023, such as row home, duplex, and triplex forms. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on amendment 6? Seeing none, I'll call the question on amendment 6. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Amendment 7, that the residential land use designations at the intersection of 28th Avenue and 200th Street be reviewed by staff for additional density. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, call the question on amendment 7. Councillor Pratt. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Amendment 8, that additional landscape buffering of 10 to 15 meters be added adjacent to Noel Booth natural wetland and detention areas adjacent to row house townhouse. It's to be added as appropriate for council to consider. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Call the question on amendment 8. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Amendment 9, that elementary school park sites be 11 acres, include a provision for nonprofit childcare, with the remaining 1 acre to be for outdoor nature and park spaces potentially located elsewhere in more applicable areas for a majority of future residents for council to consider. Seconded by Councillor Rint. Is there any discussion on number 9? Seeing none, I'll call the question on number 9. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. So those are all the amendments that I had. We'll go down the list. Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, it'll help if people turn to H1, page 12, so you can see exactly where I'm pointing at with these. First one is that the land use designation for properties in the Booth neighborhood plan immediately north of the special housing designation in the Fern Ridge neighborhood plan be changed from row house to SMU 3.
Okay, that's missing there, but I think we've got that motion. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rint.
And if I can speak to that, that special housing, I don't want to see townhouses. I want to put the lowest possible density next to that in light of what we may be putting in there in special housing. So I want to take that down from townhouses, which will be about 3 stories, down to single residential to help the people that will be going into the special housing adjust better.
Yeah. So the missing part there, I have it here, is the designation north be changed from row house townhouse down to SMU 3. So that's the missing part. After Fern Ridge neighborhood plan, be changed from row house townhouse to SMU 3. Councillor Martins.
Oh, thank you. You just answered my question. So we're not voting on what's on the screen, which is what you stated, correct?
There's an additional component that is missing, so we'll track down. But not a big deal. But there's a line missing there that that Councillor Bailey is proposing to change the designation adjacent to special housing down from row house townhouse to a lower density of SMU 3.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And your worship, if I may interrupt, is there a possibility we could also add south of 28th? It would just provide more clarity and put a boundary on that as well. So it's north of special housing designation and south of 28th Avenue.
And west of 200.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought Councillor Bailey covered that with immediately north, so it's adjacent to. But if you wish, we can amend it further. We can't amend an amendment, so we can amend it further if you want to make another tweak, Councillor Bailey. So we can come back to that. So we call the question on the amendment as presented. Councillor Pratt. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. So Councillor Bailey, do you wish to amend that amendment further? Go ahead.
And no, I think that's, it's defined good enough on the corner of 200th and the southwest corner of 200th and 28th.
If you don't like of course, this is only second reading. If you want to tweak it further, you certainly can once we see that
We can
further.
tweak it later.
Okay, so you have another amendment to make? Go ahead.
Yes, that within the Booth neighborhood plan, the landscape buffer along Employment be shifted to the western shared property lines with the row house, townhouse designation extended further west.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Do you have any other discussion on that, Councillor Bailey?
So if you look at on the map and you'll see the townhouse designation, then you'll see the landscape buffer and then employment lands. Apparently that splits all those properties facing 200th. And what I'm looking at is moving the landscape buffer to the property line to make it less disruptive to the people that own those properties. Imagine having half of your property as township and half of your property as employment lands. And this and the other ones all have come about because of discussions at the open house the other day. And I'm really glad I go to those because as Councillor Kunst so aptly put it, this is not my wheelhouse either.
Okay, I appreciate the amendment. Any other discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question on number one there. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Councillor Bailey, did you have in another amendment?
The last one, that a portion of the lands designated employment in the Fern Ridge neighborhood plan fronting 24th Avenue be changed to park and open space.
So, sorry. There you go. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Continuous park spaces, additional preservation of areas directly adjacent to wetlands, and for this area of employment designation lands to maintain a uniform depth of 115 meters fronting 196th Street.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on this amendment?
Yeah, the reason I'm doing this is if you look at the map, you'll see this odd designation on the property that is immediately west to the property that we purchased on 24th Avenue last year. And I just want to try to open up that corridor for wildlife and wetland preservation as much as I can. I would like to pop it open a little more, but I'll take what I can get right now.
Okay, great. Is there any other discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question on that amendment. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. I believe, Mr. Councillor Bailey, is that it? All right, Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and I apologize for missing the vote a few times based on some of the amendments. I wanted to change what I was submitting so that there wasn't redundancies.
I believe one of them is covered now, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. So partially changed C, but we'll get to that in a moment. The first amendment would be update the employment land use policy section in each neighborhood plan to include the following permitted uses: 1, restaurants; 2, brewery or distillery; 3, public works yard, maintenance and storage facilities.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. You go ahead and speak to it. If you wish.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Reading through the neighborhood plans, I just found that the permitted uses for the employment lands was too narrow in my estimation, and I think that talking to some colleagues about what they wanted to see for the lands fronting the future Fern Ridge Nature Park just provided a little bit more flexibility in that regard. I just wanted to provide as much flexibility to the township as possible.
Okay, great. Councillor Van Popta?
Just seeing this on the fly, I just had more questions as to maybe it could be considered permitted uses?
Mr. Cooner, is it the same thing? How would that work?
Or are we saying guaranteed that in the employment lands we can have?
Not guaranteed.
For Your Worship, to Councillor Van Popta, the interpretation currently as it sits states that the neighborhood plan include the following permitted uses. Staff would interpret that to mean that the zoning bylaw itself would include these uses.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm, okay,
May I?
thank you. Yep.
It's only second reading as well too, but yeah, it's an
May I?
interesting question. We can come back to you, Councillor Pratt. Councillor Martins, go ahead.
Thank you. And I guess I've got two questions here, and one would be for the mover. The first, yeah, that's you. The first line says, in each neighborhood plan. Are we talking across the board in the community, or are you talking specifically to the 3 neighborhood plans that we're looking at?
I can answer that. Only 2 neighborhood plans, Booth and Fernridge, contemplate employment, so it would be presumably each neighborhood plan that contains an employment designation.
Each being just those 2?
Fernridge and Booth are the only 2 that have a designation for employment.
Okay. And then my next question, if I can, through the chair to staff, when I'm looking at the report, so it's, I guess it's page 117 of our agenda package. It says page 21, and defines employment. The employment land use designation provides job opportunities for community residents. It provides for a mix of light industrial, warehousing, and distribution uses designed in such a as a way to be compatible with nearby residential uses. And then employment land use policies permit employment uses limited to the following: wholesale warehouse and distribution, indoor and outdoor storage, scientific and technical research, and information technology. So we would be adding to that list these 3 items that Councillor Pratt has brought forward. Then point 2 in this on this page says, where an above use is defined in zoning bylaw 1987, number 2500, the definition in said bylaw shall prevail above any other definition. So are these 3 permitted uses clearly defined in our zoning bylaw?
Mr. Cooner? Mr. Richardson?
Through your worship to Councillor Martins, my understanding and interpretation would be that the zoning bylaw itself would be amended to include these following permitted uses, and then Mr. Richardson can comment on whether the current zoning bylaw does in fact have these permitted uses in it.
Thank you, Worship. To supplement Mr. Cooner's items there, the restaurant uses included in our, I think, our commercial uses generally. Brewery distillery was added by council a number of years ago to include that in some of our industrial zones. In public works yards, maintenance and storage facilities, I believe, are provided for in the uses permitted in all zones section, Your Worship.
Yeah, my understanding that it is an individual zoning bylaws for specific pieces of property are brought forward for council. These permitted uses would be supported by staff, and that the council at the day could make a decision to add or further restrict to those uses based upon their decision-making process. But this would give justification or a process for staff to support proponents adding these proposed uses to their individual zoning bylaws. Do I have that correct, Mr. Richardson?
That's correct, Your Worship. This would provide that policy context for that recommendation, Your Worship.
There we are, the policy context. Councilor Martins, do you have anything else?
No, thank you, and that is helpful information. So, because my understanding is public works yards, maintenance and storage facilities specifically, I thought were considered an institution, or the public works yards anyways, are institution use rather than employment. I'm not clear on the difference in the definitions.
Mr.
So
Cooner?
some information would be helpful.
Yeah, Mr. Cooner or Mr. Richardson?
Thank you, Worship. Public works yards is an interesting question, the distinction there. Public works yards being a public use is sometimes interpreted as a institutional use because it's operated by a public entity, i.e. the township.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was, say, a non-public use, it would be akin to a light industrial use, to Worship, depending on the specific uses that were included there.
Right. Okay. No, because I read the word public, so that says to me it's the public works yards at the beginning of this phrase versus just works yards. So, okay, thank you. I'm sufficiently confused, but I'm assuming this vote right now does not change our bylaws. We're not changing anything. This is just moving forward to the next stage.
That's correct. This is amending second reading, which can be amended further at third reading or final adoption. Yeah. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I like this. I think we've got a unique opportunity in that area where, and I've talked to Councillor Pratt and a few other people about this, where by encouraging distinct uses within the employment lands, we can possibly make something very unique where we've got this beautiful park that's going in with the wetlands and all that kind of stuff. And where across the street you could have restaurants, coffee shops, you could have wine tasting, you could have any kind of thing there that would fit in, local businesses that do nature-based businesses. And I would point to a place, Leavenworth, Washington, where it is a huge draw, where an awful lot of the businesses that are localized are very, very upfront, and I think it'd make an incredible kind of a small destination, nature-based area where if you include things like this and others, hopefully that's the kind of employment that would go in that area.
Thank you. Councillor Van Popta?
Mr. Mayor, if you could clarify. So just hearing what you're saying, that if it complies, or that we have an opportunity later when it comes to rezoning, I've heard in the past, though, if something complies with what's in the bylaw and what's in the zoning, that we can't reject an application. So the only thing I worry about is actually I have a little bit of a differing interpretation of employment land use, which is something that we're desperately short of in the Township of Langley. And so these, at least number 1 and number 2, or at least most definitely number 1, is more of a commercial aspect. And so I would hate to see employment lands be taken over by commercial uses like restaurants, although it's a nice environment, but we're short of employment land. So if we want to put commercial there, that's different, but I don't want to see employment lands used for commercial purposes.
Yeah, so I think the Second Amendment and other policies certainly restrict the form, so we don't end up with a strip mall, right? Something like that. That's certainly a concern that I would have, that if you say, okay, it's going to be restaurants, now it's a strip mall. Or a destination, for a single-story restaurant use. I don't think that's the intent here. I think the intent is to give some life and some vitality to some of these employment areas if opponents so wish. That's how I interpret this. I'll let Councillor Pratt respond. The challenge, I guess, is that when we talk about what's in the plan has to move forward. Mr. Richardson can maybe confirm, but I think that that's more in the realm of residential, that if someone has a residential density, that there's an expectation from the province that they're entitled to build that density, as opposed to land use itself. The density of use may be a consideration. Mr. Richardson, maybe help me a little bit on that.
Thank you, Worship. In the context of the residential, you correct, Your Worship, in terms of the mandated provincial items with respect to allowing additional units per lot. The question from Councillor Van Popta, if I'm correct, may be seeking clarification on council's powers in terms of that. The OCP stage, as stated previously, provides sort of a policy context for staff to consider as council's direction for making rezoning recommendations. Council at the rezoning stage has full purview whether they want to support or not support those applications for that land use type. The properties in Brooksford are generally designated suburban residential 2 and a 2-acre zoning. So all the properties will likely require a rezoning, and then council has full purview at that stage to make those land use decisions. In other situations that we have zone land, we have more limited powers, let's say, for form and character in the DP setting. So I hope that helps, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I think every comment and every question has been very helpful, and I appreciate the feedback. And the intent with this specific one was to provide more flexibility at this stage, not to prescribe anything, but to allow for something to potentially go in. I think of across the border in 196th Street in Surrey, you have an urban distillery, you've got an urban winery contained within Campbell Heights. And so I think that is a compatible use on number 2. I think for number 1, and I should stress that each one of these 3 bullet points was actually taken directly from an industrial zoning bylaw that we currently have, restaurants being service industrial M1, the brewery and distillery use from, I believe, M11, and then the final public works yard from service industrial M1 as well. With the restaurants, that definition, as I understand, can include a whole variety of things, coffee shops, whatnot. So when I think of that, I think of, if it's a small bay industrial unit, somebody can open a coffee shop there, have potentially a bit more warehousing in the back. Just again, to provide that opportunity that if somebody's walking along the trails that are going to be there, there's a coffee shop that they can pop into, since the commercial spaces that we're providing in Brookswood are pretty large and at 200th Street and 32nd, and then all the way down at 24th. So this is a bit of a middle ground. And then Public Works Yard, I think for me, it's just an issue of providing the township with as much flexibility as possible moving forward. And just found that the uses that were already in the bylaws, or sorry, already in the NCPs here were just slightly limiting. And then yes, because it is in the Brookswood OCP, this would only apply to the Brookswood NPs.
Any other discussion on that amendment A? Seeing none, I'll call the question on amendment A. That carries with Councillor Richter and Councillor Rent opposed. Item B, or sorry, Councillor Pratt, do you have another? I'm going to clear the queue and go back to Councillor Pratt. Go ahead.
Thank you. So Amendment B would read, update the employment land use policy section in the neighborhood plan to include a fourth paragraph that reads, quote, where properties that are designated for employment lands share a border with the lands designated for the future Fernridge Nature Park, proponents are strongly encouraged to provide pedestrian scale frontages that include commercial uses to activate the street. And I actually...
Before you move that, would you be open to removing the word strongly and just encourage?
I was going to actually remove a couple of things, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would remove the word strongly, and I'd also remove the words that include commercial uses. So the amendment would read, where properties that are designated for employment lands share a border with the lands designated for the future Fernridge Nature Park, proponents are encouraged to provide pedestrian scale frontages that activate the street.
Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Go ahead.
Yeah, for me, the rationale being, if I look across the street again at the Surrey Campbell Heights neighborhood, there are certain developments where fronting a road or fronting a trail, you actually have the back of house operations. So you have the trucks, you have the loading bays. And so I think for what we're trying to achieve at Fernridge Nature Park, whether it be the commercial uses that are not strongly encouraged but are possible to be along the Fernridge border, the Fernridge Nature Park border, or whether it's simply saying we don't actually want people who are walking along those trails to be staring directly at the back of house. We want the frontage of the actual warehouses themselves, or businesses or offices or restaurants, whatever they are. Those should be encouraged to be facing the park.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson?
You know, I know that we're just in a planning stage. You're going to public hearing, and I'm not sure if I totally understand. I'm living close by this for many years, watching Campbell Heights go up. I'm not sure if I totally understand what we want to do here, and I'm trying to think of an example. But I think we have an opportunity, I guess, to address it at public hearing, but I'm not going to support it right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion on that amendment? Call the question on that amendment of H1. And that carries with Councillor Richter, Councillor Rent, Councillor Ferguson opposed. Councillor Pratt, I believe C has been covered?
Partly, unless I misunderstood what we passed previous. Maybe you can just clarify for me. My understanding based on the first or second amendment of yours was that the portion of the SSMUH designation immediately to the west of the apartments was changed to row house. This was specifically for the section that was immediately to the north of the apartment designation as well, as you transition to 33A Avenue.
Mr. Cooner, can you clarify? Maybe
if we could pull up a map, perhaps, then I can.
Fronting 32 Street is in here, west of the apartment designation. It does sound very similar, so.
Yep. No. If it covers the same thing, then I'm happy to withdraw it. But I just wanted to make sure that
you haven't moved it and seconded it yet. So hopefully we can clarify that it's
more than happy
not
to
necessary.
Not do that.
But if it is, of course, we'll process it.
Just bear with me here, Your
Yeah,
Worship.
no problem.
We're just pulling out the motion suggested by Your Worship and the map. I think that was the first one. And through Your Worship to Councillor Pratt, could you just repeat what your interpretation of that of your motion was? Exactly where were you seeking the townhouse and row home designation?
So, as of right now, based on my understanding of what was passed from Mayor Woodward's amendment, was that the SSMUH designations west of the apartment designation have now been changed or at least amended to row house townhouse. What I'm wondering is if that amendment also changed the, albeit small designation, small land area that is designated for SSMUH north of the apartment designation as well, south of 33A Avenue as you move towards the existing single-family neighborhood.
Through your worship to Councillor Pratt, no, it does not change the north. There still will be a buffer that has SSMUH3 designated there to transition.
Right, and I think the intent of that motion, if it was moved and seconded, would be to provide a bit more, in my opinion, of a graduated transition going from apartment directly to small scale, probably single family housing right next to it, and then go to 33A, and then go to the existing single family neighborhood. In my opinion, it would make sense to have a transition of row house townhouse immediately adjacent to the apartments, and then have 33A Avenue there, and then the single family neighborhood on the other side. That's the intent of the amendment, to do something very similar to what the mayor did with his amendment, just going north as well as west.
Do you wish to move it?
I do.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Martins. So the way I'm looking at this, Mr. Cooner, do you have anything else on this?
No.
Okay. Mr. Cooner, I just want to clarify. So this is essentially reducing the density of a section of lands. Is that correct?
No, your worship, it would be increasing the density, I believe, as when you're fronting the established Brookswood. Yes, it would be increasing.
So it would be increasing. So the subsequent amendment at third, if this was reverted, would be to decrease, which would not trigger another public hearing. Is that correct?
Through your worship, provided we have consent of the owner, that would not trigger a public hearing.
I believe, trying to word this carefully, because if you reduce the density, that would require the consent of the public, of the owner after a public hearing, but an increase would not. Is that correct? Do I have that too simple?
You are correct.
So I think that's the challenge. It may be challenging to revert this back without triggering another public hearing.
Well, and again, that would be the prerogative of council at that time. I think the reality is, from a land use perspective, we're going to have an apartment neighborhood, and then now to the west, you will have a row house transition neighborhood, then subsequently a single family neighborhood further to the west of that as you go towards the single family that already exists that was built pretty recently. So the logic being, to the north of this apartment neighborhood, instead of immediately going to small scale single family homes, go to a townhouse transition, have a road, and then a single family neighborhood as well. So it's a contiguous transition around that apartment block, not just some row house, some single family.
You know, what time are we here? We're 4 o'clock. We don't have many other items left on the agenda. Why don't we call a 5-minute recess, get a map up, get this right, so we don't have to trigger another public hearing, give council the map, and then we'll look at that, and then just so we'll pause for 5 minutes. Let me have a chance to ask, and then we'll bring it up with a map. Thank you. All right, so we'll get back underway. Mr. Chu, if you could explain that, give the council the explanation you just gave me, please. Oh, put your mic on here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Based on the initial amendment to the Smooth 3 designation, just west of the apartment designation.
You could indicate that with the arrow at the mouse.
Yeah, so where the cursor is hovering, that's the amendment to the Smooth 3 designation. So basically, it's the area between 198th Street, that's the street that's built going north-south between 32nd Avenue and 33A. But please be mindful of the existing single-family lots along the east side of 198th Street. So it's the area between the single-family lots and the proposed apartment designation, and that's the effect of the earlier amendment. The current proposed amendment, I think, refers to the lands just immediately south of 33A, between 198th Street and 200th Street.
And so it would allow some questions from council. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I think Mr. Chu accurately expressed what the intent was. Where the apartment designation ends on the west side of that apartment designation, that is the limit of the change, so that there would be a row house transition to the single-family neighborhood to the north. Looking at the property lines itself, right now, most of those properties that are split between apartment and single-family are split anyways, and so realistically there would have to be a new road built east-west to accommodate some single family to the north that's proposed in this plan. So realistically you could still access the row house townhouse if that was the...
There would be a lane between the Smooth 3 designation and the apartment designation.
Yes.
So with the current proposal, you were hoping to basically change the designation to row house townhouse.
Correct. Still access from the lane in the back.
That's right. And with the previous amendment, moving the density from 18 units per acre to 20 units per acre, that would be the density of the proposed change.
Correct. Yeah, thank you.
And the challenge that we have as a council now is that if this were to proceed as a collection of single-family lots, with 4 units per lot, it would be equivalent to a townhouse density.
It's, yes, basically.
Yeah. So again, this comes back to the province stripping local government of its ability to create single-family neighborhoods with security that it's going to be built in a certain way. Yeah, so that's the core challenge here, is that it's going to look like a townhouse, upzone to townhouse, when in fact it's roughly equivalent, but the form is different. It won't be a single-family detached form, which I believe, Mr. Chu, you've related that there are some residents to the north that are looking or expecting that. Is that correct?
Yes, throughout our planning process for the community plan and the neighborhood plans, residents to the north of 33A would like to see an equal interface. So they would like to see single-family type of typology on the south side of 33A.
And if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I appreciate that concern. I guess from my perspective, my answer would be that approximately 35 meters behind those proposed single-family homes, which would be likely 25 feet tall anyways, based on what we predominantly see built these days, potentially even taller. About 30 meters behind that, you're going to have a 6 to 8 story apartment building. So realistically, we're not going to be dealing with a neighborhood that looks significantly like a single-family detached neighborhood that we're used to in Brookswood. We're going to be dealing with single-family homes that are 30 feet tall with potentially up to 4 units in them anyways, and then having an apartment that's up to 6 to 8 stories behind it. So instead of that, we can have the security and certainty of knowing what the density will be, and also having a more accessible and affordable type of home being built. It's one that's highest in demand if you look at what the market's asking for right now. And then for me, it just makes sense because you're still going to have a lane in the back accessing these townhomes, row homes, especially if they're not in strata, act as a single family fee simple lot anyways. So that was the intent of the amendment. Completely understand that based on not having any visuals on the front of us beforehand, it was a bit confusing and complicated. So I appreciate the clarification from staff very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Chu? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion, this amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question on, what are we labeling this here? Amendment C. And that is defeated with Councillor Richter, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta, and Councillor Ferguson opposed. So now back to Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
That was the three of them.
There's a fourth here on this piece of paper?
That fourth one was, okay, well, we can go for the fourth and see if it gets defeated or not. Why not?
Designation north of...
Yes, that I believe, if we're talking to Councillor Bailey beforehand, I thought this was going to be covered off in one of his amendments, but if it wasn't, then I'd still be happy to move it.
Is that the northeast corner you're talking about?
Correct, northeast of 28th and 200th Street.
Can we bring up the map again, please, Ms. Bauer? So can we get an arrow indicating? We get an arrow indicating which area we're.
Yeah. So, as the item D, which was circulated to council, reads, it would be the area northeast of 228th Avenue.
Oh, I believe this has been covered. Is that correct? I believe that's been addressed. No.
Northeast. Right now you're pointing at the south.
Yes, correct. The cursor's pointing at the southwest. This amendment's discussing the northeast between 201 and 200 Street, which I believe was addressed by Councillor Bailey's amendment.
Through your worship, that was not addressed by the amendment.
No, it was not.
Oh, it was not? Oh, okay. So then I would move the amendment. If you'd like me to read it, I can.
Just to clarify, I thought I dealt with that.
Thank you to staff for accommodating the changes.
That on one of mine. Yeah, so we go back to the map, please. Yeah, so I believe that was dealt with amendment number 7, that the residential land use designations at the intersection of 28th and 200 should be reviewed by staff for additional densities. Rather than being overly prescriptive, allow them come back with more intensive uses of this intersection.
Yeah, and I suppose my question would be that
come back if you don't like what comes back, you could make more amendments at that time.
Yes, and I guess question with that amendment that was passed, does that include going all the way up to, I believe, what would that be, 32 Avenue?
I believe it would
30th.
not. I believe this was amendment that was
Just the intersection?
Providing some flexibility for staff to define the definition of the intersection proximity and come back with a proposal.
Okay.
So if you wish to proceed with something more prescriptive, that's perfectly fine.
No, I think that flexibility is good.
Okay, all right, thank you. So any other amendments to H1? No, with that, I want to thank the staff very much for getting all of this done as quickly as we have. And doing another open house the other night, which was great. A lot of feedback went into these amendments received from the public, received by property owners, and received by many people that are asking for many different things, from additional employment to I want the density increased, I want the density reduced. And I believe that there's a lot of different input, and council here is trying to do the best it can with the challenging provincial government and some challenging topographies and engineering and the desire to provide more tree protection, increase the room for the river. I really appreciate the proposal that expands the 30 meters to a development permit area for additional room for the river and so on. There's many good things that are in this plan that I think have not yet reached the wider audience, and I really appreciate the staff putting the proposal they have based on the constraints of the provincial government and council's desire to have a livable neighborhood with prescribed densities that result in sufficient parks and schools and childcare and so on. Very difficult with the provincial government that we currently have. With that, I'll call the question on H1 as amended. Councillor Ferguson? Yep. That carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Bylaws for final adoption, J1, land use contract discharge application number 100745. I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on J1? Seeing none, call the question on J1. That carries unanimously. Item J2, 2024 Annual Rates Tax Collection Bylaw, bylaw number 6006. I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on J2? Seeing none, call the question on J2. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. K1, I'd like to move deferral of K1 to the next council meeting. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Ferguson. The reason for the deferral is I did organize a meeting with staff that was canceled due to illness and have not yet had a chance to do that. So I would like to request one more 2-week period. Is there any discussion on that deferral? Seeing none, I'll call the question on K1, deferral. That carries unanimously. Mayor and council report. Does anybody have a report to make? Councillor Martins, go ahead.
Thank you. I have 2 items to report on. The first is the LMLGA conference. So May 1st to 3rd, my Councillor Kunst and I attended the LMLGA conference in Whistler. This year's theme was tackling the big issues. The conference began with a walking tour of Whistler's tourism facilities hosted by Whistler Mayor Jack Crompton, and then sessions on public safety challenges, the future of transportation in the Lower Mainland, the power of partnership, Indigenous insights into UNDRIP, the LMLGA AGM, and a resolution session. And the closing speakers on Friday were Keith Baldry and Vaughn Palmer, which is always entertaining. There was lots learned, lots of networking opportunities at this packed event, and there's many communities in the Lower Mainland here that are facing similar challenges to Langley, and it was a great opportunity to hear alternate solutions or just solutions that we haven't gotten to here yet in Langley, and just to the exchange of information. So I really enjoyed that conference. Then the other item, I have some slides here for you all. We'll just go through. So first of all, it is National Police Week, May 12th to 18th in Canada. So I just wanted to acknowledge a very notable retirement from the Langley RCMP. This is Steve Wade. Steve Wade attended the RCMP depot training in 1985, graduating with top marks in his troop. While he hoped for a big city assignment, he found himself in Porcupine Plain, Saskatchewan, population 830. His training officer noted his extremely long feet and expressed concern at vehicle stops that if he stood too close, a fleeing vehicle may run over those feet. Steve eventually transferred to Fort Capel and Highway Patrol, Regina Drug Unit, and then returned home to BC to the Drug Unit in Vancouver. That unit made the largest heroin seizure in North America at the time. Steve then transferred to the Justice Institute of BC, teaching firearms and drill, that's marching, which many of us municipal police recruits suffered through. We were a sad disappointment compared to the caliber exhibited by our RCMP counterparts. Despite our shortcomings, Steve grinned like a proud parent at every recruit class graduation. Steve was transferred to Langley RCMP for the first time before receiving his officer commission to Surrey RCMP detachment. In that rank, he then served in Burnaby, Coquitlam, and eventually returned to Langley in 2020 as our operations officer, the second in command of the Langley detachment, lending his reliable and no-nonsense leadership through some challenging times, including a pandemic and a mass shooting tragedy. Steve has many notable accomplishments, including being a use of force expert and developing the original active shooter program for the RCMP. He is well regarded in the Langley community for his work as a scout leader and as part of the organizing committee of the Fort Langley Remembrance Day ceremony. After 39 years of service, Steve worked his last day on March 15th, 2024, and here he is exiting the RCMP detachment for the final time. Thank you to Inspector Steve Wade for his service, trustworthy, fun to work with, and never afraid to give his honest opinion. All the best in a much-deserved retirement. He leaves with both feet still intact and some big high browns to fill. Congratulations, Steve.
Councillor Kunst?
Thank you. And thanks, Councillor Martins, for that, and also for the synopsis of LMLGA. So we were there, and one of my favorite things about LMAG is actually sitting through the resolutions. I know it might sound really boring, but it's always interesting to hear from other communities the kind of issues that they're facing and how they, look for support from other communities to bring things forward to the province. And one of those things I'm happy to report, and I know there'd be some one person that would be very happy to hear that the south of the Fraser Interurban Rail was up at LMLJ, and it got support. So I just wanted to pass that on to our council. The other thing that I did this time for the first time was I went on a ride along with RCMP Constable Peter Mann, and it was really I hate to say it, but it was kind of fun. We went all over the township. He was really hoping that I would get to some interesting call, and he's kept looking at his computer. But instead, we went to some different places in the community where we could just kind of see what happens with the RCMP on a call on a given day. So I wanted to thank our Constable Peter Mann for that, and we went to a coffee and a cop session, and the residents that were speaking with the police officers were actually more interested in talking to me and grilling me about what was going on in Willoughby. So I suggested maybe we do coffee with a cop and a counselor next time. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richter?
Yes, I was very fortunate to be able to attend the 60th International Making Cities Livable Conference at the end of April down in Newport, Rhode Island. And this is a group of people from various walks of life who are involved in developing cities, including municipal councillors, staff, architects, urban planners, a number of different professions that are trying to make our cities more sustainable and livable. It was a very jam-packed 3 days, I guess, and I brought back a couple of books for the township that I'm going to add into the council library. The first is a book called Bananas in Snow Country, which was an absolutely fascinating session about a book that was built, or a building that was built in 1983 in the Colorado mountains. And what was innovative about this particular building, and I guess you can see it, there's sort of a picture here and a picture on the back, is that this building has no furnace. And it has grown 80 banana crops in the time that the building has been in place. It relies entirely on solar energy, although there are no solar panels on the building. And what the building does is it was situated to take in massive amounts of sun, and the materials inside, such as rocks and flooring materials and so on, absorbed the heat and released it during the night hours. So basically, this is all about technology that was in place. Also, the way the building was designed, it has kind of a circular flow so that fresh air coming in is heated by outgoing warm air. So a fascinating case study. The author has signed it on behalf of, or to all of council from him, and he hopes that we learn something from it. The second most interesting speaker there was UBC's Patrick Condon, and he actually had 2 sessions. He's written a new book called The Broken City, and it's basically a comparison of Vancouver in 1970 versus Vancouver now in 2024. And he says no other city has tripled the housing available in the last few decades. Nobody comes close to Vancouver's record. He's a very big proponent of the livable region strategy. And he said the steady increase in new density has been successful, but it has not led to affordability. And as we all know, the Metro Vancouver region has the highest housing prices in the world, while household income has remained the same as it was over the last 3 decades. So in other words, what's happened is assets have become more valuable than wages. Assets now make more money than wages do, and that's part of it. What was fascinating after his session, because he opened up the door to a big discussion, and people from all over the world, from Finland, from England, from throughout the United States, from other parts of Canada, all have the same problem we do, and that's affordable housing. And a number of different areas are looking at different things, things like making 100% non-market housing pegged to median income. These are all experiments that are underway worldwide. It still hasn't solved the problem, but I would like to encourage council to consider going to subsequent sessions. I understand that the session they're going to do next year will be focused on how do we deal with the affordability issue, which is extremely topical for all of us and apparently all the world as well. So the second book that's coming is Patrick Condon's The Broken City book, which I'm sure council will find very interesting reading as well. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson?
Oh, yeah, I just, thank you. I just had a quick question for those that attended the LMLGA, that Councillor Kuntz and Councillor Martins. We had, I believe, a resolution regarding the Agricultural Land Commission and how the commission and how the land and looking after properties within our community and perhaps the region and even the Lower Mainland, whether that was addressed or discussed during the resolution, if I may.
It was addressed, so I'd have to actually go back and see. I think it got support, but I'll have to, I can actually find it right now for you.
Thanks. Any other Metro Vancouver or other regional committee reports? Councillor Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, being on the Climate Action Committee at Metro is an education and especially in the difference between rural and urban. The last time they started talking about eliminating small engines that are gas powered and going strictly to electric. So this being driven by places like Vancouver and New Westminster and that, I raised with the questions, what about farmers? And when they looked at each other, the presenters just looked at each other and went, well, they would be exempted. And then I said, how about emergency service providers? Because while we are partially transitioning into battery-powered tools, a lot of the more powerful ones, we need gas-powered. And again, they looked at each other and went, I guess they'd be exempted too. And more, I am finding that agendas like this are being driven from more urban places. And when I pointed out that we're 75% rural, and then an awful lot of our farmers and landowners have thousands of dollars of gas-powered small engines. So I then went to Diamond Bar Equipment because I've got a significant amount of, I've got acreage and I have a significant amount of small engines that are powered by gas, and started comparing power of gas versus electric. And there are a lot of problems. And I know for me to switch over would cost me a few $1,000s immediately. So I poured a little water on that idea partially, and it wasn't all that popular, surprisingly. And then made a few other points about when they're making these climate decisions that are going to be affecting more rural jurisdictions like ourselves, that they have to. And I brought up the fact they don't like it when I call some of the Chinese products crap, and how dangerous they are when it comes to the recharging of lithium batteries. Yeah, they kind of shiver, but this is such a significant issue that the Fire Commissioner's Office, the FCABC, and the BC PFFA have formed a committee about lithium charging stations. And the real dangers come from, associated with this, people charging their electric vehicles, like scooters and bikes, in their houses and in their apartments, and an awful lot of times right by the front door. So yeah, it's fun bringing a little reality to some of these other jurisdictions about the difference between rural and urban. And it's interesting seeing the response as I'm there more and more, how some people actually like the idea of talking about slower transitions rather than, as one mayor in there said, let's get about doing it right now. And he didn't like my recommendations at all.
I think the Climate Action Committee is it's great to have you there. Certainly, there's lots to talk about the Climate Action Committee, and some of the recommendations it's made have been voted down, or basically voted down by the main board. So there is some disconnect there, and I appreciate your effort to raise some of these issues with that committee, and hopefully have recommendations that come to the board that are supported. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah. No, yeah, and before I make my report, I just want to say that Councillor Bailey's right. Some of us don't have power for one reason or another, and some of us go to properties outside, and they where they don't, all they have is outhouses. So family, we go camping the odd time, and we need sometimes gas-operated generators and stuff like that. My report is more zero waste, and we had Paul Henderson here today, not the hockey player, and I wanted to bring it to the council's attention with the work you've done and I've done. The Metro Vancouver is listening. That project was supposed to come out next term, 4 years from now, and they pushed it forward with a little bit of encouragement from us. I talked to our staff. They're very happy to see that happening, delivery of recycling and other, a relatively new service to our community. So that's a very positive thing to say, and we're looking forward to it being built. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to items for information, O to 6. Is there any discussion? And then we'll process motion P1. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, number 3, 03.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Dale Ball Passive Park. I have fluked into 2 different times the popularity of disc golf. TWU has a university disc golf team, and our park that is right across from the transfer station on 272 apparently is a world-class disc golf course. And it's they hold massive tournaments out there sometimes, and people can walk through the course safely. Now, the 2 fellows that I walked through the Dale Ball Passive Park with are in a different situation. They're raising concerns about flooding with 2 different catchments coming from future development, possibly coming in there and flooding, and also the way that some of the trails have been done now will possibly put pedestrians and the golfers at odds. They're worried about the discs coming down the sidewalks that have been put in place, and I just really want to make sure that I encourage staff to talk to the golfers, the disc golfers at Dale Ball Park, because they have some very significant concerns. And they also have, I said, don't just give me the problems, okay? Let's have a few solutions, and they're game for that. So, yeah, if we can just pay attention to Dale Ball Passive Park, that'd be great.
Any follow-ups? No? Okay. Any other discussion on any item? Councillor, any other discussion on any other item, 01 to 6? Seeing none, there's process motion P1. Maybe the representatives can give us some context to this. Staff have raised a concern about some of the wording regarding all stairs in the township. This is how it actually technically reads. So I think it would be appropriate to move this with an amendment to restrict it to TOL facilities. Moved by Councillor Ferguson. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Bailey. Is there any discussion on P1 as amended? Call the question on P1 as amended. That carries unanimously. Other business, Q1, I will move it. I move it with amendments. Change it here. I'm going to move it amended to say, therefore be it resolved that council hereby authorizes $7,060.19 from the 2024 advanced budget and appropriate the second paragraph to add at the end of $7,500 per year. So that council refer and include within the draft 2025 budget an annual amount for an annual state of Langley address of $7,500. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on Q1? Councillor Martins.
Thank you. Maybe this is just more of a request for staff when it comes to scheduling this event in the future. It wasn't in the council calendar right out of the gates anyways. The way I found out about it was through advertising on social media. What would be helpful is if it's in the council calendar, and also that perhaps the date is selected around some of the things that we have sort of placeholders on our council calendar. I was unable to attend the event as I was at the LMLGA conference. That's one of the 3 conferences that the council has agreed to, feeling they're suitable for us to attend. So it would be nice to be able to attend this event. So if we could perhaps just consider a date that doesn't conflict with those sorts of things, that would be great. That was all.
With that, I'll call the question on Q1. That carries with Councillor Richter and Councillor Kunst opposed. Q2, I'm going to move that with an amendment. I forgot to put in a funding source, so that'll be it resolved that council approve community grants C24 from council contingency for the remainder of the motion. So I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any discussion on Q2? Councillor Richter.
What exactly, like, what's the amount and what's it being used for?
Mr. Cooner?
Sorry, the amount is $2,034. It looks like it's Heritage Hall parking lot improvement.
Thank you.
With that, I'll call the question on Q2. That carries unanimously. Councillor Van Popta, go ahead.
Yeah, so this item came across.
You wish to move it?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Go ahead.
This item came up in one of our DL packs in April, towards the end of April there, that this club didn't receive any federal funding unexpectedly, and they offer great summer programs to youth. And so I would like to see us at least help fill some of that gap so that they can do summer programs.
All right, Councillor Pratt.
Fully support it, but I'm curious, has there been any rationale provided why they didn't get the grant?
No, and it was unexpected.
Yeah, so I think they were going to try to work on that, get some clarity from the federal government, what they were lacking or what elements they may need to change. And there wasn't a lot of leeway, just denied. And so they're going to do that work, and I'm just going to help them with a little bit to bridge that gap just a little bit.
I think the funding shortfall was about 50,000. So this is just
so it's a significant amount, and this is a small token of our support and the good programming. All right, with that, call the question on Q3. That carries unanimously. Councillor Kunst.
Yeah, I would just like to move my notice of motion.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Richter. Go ahead.
Yeah, so kind of speaks for itself. I think that it would be sort of prudent to understand how much money that we have spent in the last year and a bit, which would include the principal and the interest going forward. And to clarify, I have actually voted for many of these things. So this is just something that I think for me to just get a better handle of where we're at with what we've spent up to now. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, call the question on Q4. And that's defeated with Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Van Popta, Councillor Ferguson opposed. Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So most of council, or all council, will remember earlier last year when neighborhood came to us with some concerns about a lane that was left open in the rear of their properties, basically on the border with the Williams plan. We had approved that lane being closed with some emergency bollards, but that was up to the design of the engineering department. The challenge is that until the development application on the Williams side actually proceeds, the funds are not available for those improvements to be put in. And so that is why the lane remains open. So what this motion would do, if it was moved and seconded and approved, would...
Yeah, so why don't we do that? Why don't we move it?
Sure, I'll move it.
I forgot to do that.
Yep,
Seconded by
so did I.
Councillor Martins. Is there... Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you, but go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And so what this would do is it would ask for a staff report to come back to us with the costs associated with funding it ourselves from a reserve. In this case, it was identified just preliminary as capital project reserve, and that the funds would be repaid in full by the developer of the Williams site once that development application actually proceeded.
Okay, so I had some questions. Not seeing any other speakers. I certainly think we need to deal with the issue. I think there was some concerns raised about the nature of the prerequisite and some of these other items, such as modification of the cul-de-sac and hammerhead and so on. So I think rather than try to process this or amend this with funding and other things, I think we should get some context on how we do this and how we recover it, the exact scope of the works that will be fronted versus weighted. So I certainly support advancing this and getting it to a state that it can be addressed. So, but I'm going to move to refer this to staff for a recommendation and report, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. So that's a referral to staff to get a recommendation and a stage of how we're going to do this with the prerequisite attached to development, some other complications that have to be worked with. But I agree that we need to get some of this done based upon the continued delays that we see on the Williams neighborhood plan, based upon that detention pond not proceeding. Councillor Martins?
Thank you, and I appreciate your comments about the referral. Is it possible to perhaps have that done sooner than later in the spirit of the original motion that we're trying to address this concern that's been dragging on for a very long time?
Mr. Cooner, I think you and I talked about a potential timeline to come back relatively soon with a really simple report, not a lot of work to be done, and come back with a recommendation that can be processed by staff. Do you have any ideas on a timeline?
That is correct, Your Worship. If Council's prerogative is to have this item expedited, there may be a deadline imposed. I would comment to Mr. Swag and Mr. Richardson to just weigh in on this as well, as it will be stemming from Development Services and Engineering.
Thank you, through to Your Worship. Mr. Cordero is also here in the office. We've been working cooperatively between transportation staff and development engineering staff on some items there. Given the lands that are available, wanting to provide for emergency vehicle access, service vehicle turnaround, and passenger vehicle access, there were some items and required modifications as sort of alluded to in the motion there for staff to consider. But certainly, as Mr. Cooner outlined, we can make that a priority and back to council in short order, Your Worship.
So, I mean, if we can expect to see it in June, is that reasonable?
If that's council's direction, Your Worship, certainly.
Or certainly before the summer break? Councilor Martins, do you have a specific timeline you'd like to impose?
No, I appreciate what you're saying. I'm just wondering, do we need a motion of council for that timeframe?
We can maybe take it under direction, or we could add it to the motion. It's up to the prerogative of council. Yeah. Right now, we have a referral to staff for a recommendation and report, and my intent there is to also have paragraph 3 be specific on the funding being requested. It's kind of open-ended here, and that's got to be addressed. So I think we could amend the referral with a specific time frame if you wish to do that. We can come back to you. I've got other speakers. Yeah. Councillor Ferguson?
Oh, I just want to, I think that's a good idea that we've had a lot of discussion. I want to thank Councillor Pratt for bringing this to our attention, because it is something that's got to be addressed in a timely manner, and we'll work out the details regarding the funding and other things, but it's an important thing, and I'm glad he brought it to our attention. I appreciate all the comments by staff, Mr. Richardson and yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Martins, if you wish to specify a time frame, or we can take it under direction that I'll put it in a timeline and I'll find out, but I think if you wish to require a timeline, that would be fine.
I'm comfortable with staff hearing that it's a priority, and yeah.
There's only four council meetings left, so if we have, basically before the summer break, this will be resolved.
I think that sounds excellent.
Does that seem achievable?
Yes, it does seem achievable. The last council meeting, July 15th, staff will definitely aim to have this before council prior to July 15th.
Yeah, great, thank you. So with that, I'll call the question on the referral, Q5. That carries unanimously. Is there any other business? Councillor Pratt, do you have any other business? No. Is there any other business? No, seeing none. I have 3 legal items to add. Is there any other motion, any other councillor wish to add an item? Councillor Ferguson?
I think I have one consideration.
Consideration. Anything else? Seeing none, get a motion to resolve into special close, moved by Councillor Brint, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Get a motion to terminate, moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Bailey. Those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you.